Greetings, folks, and we're about to continue a conversation which I think is very interesting. Sort of like deciding between ISFP and ISFJ as a best fit for Shannon. So please continue your point, Jeff.
Of course, the phone's ringing now. Hold on a second.
Okay. I'll just elaborate a bit with Shannon. So Shannon, please tell us about the parts of either type that you see, like how you see yourself sitting between these two types.
So I definitely feel I see the phi-C, the introverted feeling and the extroverted sensing. I feel like my judging function is to kind of go inside and see, well, what do I think is right? What do I think is basically anything I judge other people as doing, I look like internally, and I don't really look at the like society around me. I'm just like, oh, they kind of have their own thing going on, but I really believe this, so I'm going to go with this. And then extroverted sensing, the way I see it is I'm looking at using my sensory input to create the world around me. And I kind of operate from a sense of, okay, what's around me to use? What am I sensing? What am I seeing? What can I put together to kind of to function, to use those things to function with? And then when it comes to ISFJ, I was reading The Guardian, and please understand me. And I was also, and Galenko actually. So I'm kind of mixing all of this together, but I definitely see that there's some Guardian tendencies as well.
Yeah. See, I think that's the Enneagram 6, but then you're like, no, Ben, I am now identifying as a 4.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm an ISFJ 4, which looks like a 6. Also, the self-pres.
You see, ISFJ 4 is a little bit of a weird combo.
Yeah, I don't even know.
But ISFP 6, because... Yeah, so Jeff, do you want to continue that point that you were about to start with?
I forgot the exact words that she said right before we started recording, but it reminded me of just like a day or two ago, I was talking to my son about the fact that when he was growing up and when I first told him and he learned about personality types himself, when I was having to lay down the law in some way on something he was doing, he would accuse me of acting like a guardian or trying to be a guardian. Guardian in the SJ temperament sense. And what I was explaining to him just a couple of days ago is when he would do that, that what it is not that I became that. It's that stuff about the logistical things, about making sure that people are taken care of and have what they need and all that kind of stuff. When you're a parent, that's the most important thing, because it's like if you don't take care of the basic needs, and then it can't do anything else. And so even though as an artisan, freedom and opportunities are like my number one thing, and I always want to make sure he had those, that was very important to me. But just from like accepting the facts, I know that freedom and opportunity, like you can't have that unless they have the basic needs met. Like if you have a child that's constantly sick because you just say, oh, well, you can eat whatever you want, so they just eat candy and nothing else, so they're unhealthy. Well, then they're going to be sick all the time, and then they can't go out and play sports or do whatever, You know what I'm saying? That there's those basic necessities that on the surface seem more like the guardian worries or, the things that they care more about. But as a parent, it's like those things are essential whether you're a guardian type or not. So you sort of, and especially in my case as a single parent, I had to fill those roles whether I wanted to or not, So it didn't take me that long to figure out that there's things that just sort of supersede my plans, you know. When I was a teenager or whatever, I was this type of person that was like, well, when I'm a parent, I'm gonna let my kid do what they want to do, you know. A lot of teenagers say that, but then when the reality comes where you actually have a child, it's like it's not even a choice. It's like it just takes over that instinct of to protect them from things because somebody has to. So again, I think that, you know, like in the book Brains and Careers, Keirsey talked about, you know, everybody has to fill these roles, all of these roles at some point in life, probably. Like most of these things, the logistical, strategic, tactical, and diplomatic, like all those things are necessary at times in life, sometimes within the same day. But so it's not a matter of, oh, well, I do this thing that's kind of a guardian thing, therefore I must be a guardian. Because the temperament, the basic temperament, is just like fundamentally what drives you. So it doesn't even mean it doesn't even mean that you can't have a day where the main things you're worried about that entire day are logistical things. And at the end of the day, you say, well, you know, today all I was worried about was, you know, does somebody have enough food to eat, or does somebody have enough money to do what they needed to buy, or, you know, all these things. You can look back on the day and think all of my concerns today were these logistical things. That doesn't mean that you're a guardian just because that was what your day was. It just means that was what the necessities of today were. But if you ask yourself, even at the end of that same day, what do I really want to do? Like if I didn't have to be worried about anything, you know, what would I do? That's more how you get the answer to those things. That's why when anybody asks me, when anybody's confused about their basic temperament, I always say, what do you live for? Not what do you have to do, but what actually gets you interested and excited? What makes you go, yeah, this is worth getting up in the morning, not just, oh, these are duties that I have to attend to, or this is the circumstances of my life. So that's always my question, is like, what do you actually live for? What motivates you? Because if you can answer that question, you can usually get to it pretty quickly. And Ben actually, I think, excerpted my video with Selbach from several years ago, because I asked him that question. You know, if you didn't have any restraints on you for time, money, anything like that, having a job, any of that kind of stuff, like what would you want to do right now? Where would you want to go? You know, and he said, well, you know, I would want to just drive in a part of the country that I hadn't driven in before. So I said, you know, well, okay, well, why do you want to do that? What do you get out of that? You know, and I won't rehash the whole thing, but he basically, like everything he said, it came down to he just wanted the experience um, of that, of going there. You know, that there wasn't specific knowledge he was trying to acquire. There wasn't a specific kind of deeper meaning that he was after. It wasn't so he would be more skilled at driving specifically. It wasn't to acquire any sort of material goods or meet needs of anyone. It was just because that was what he felt like doing. And like that's like the essence of SP artisan right there. You know, it's that ultimately what you want to do is have the freedom to go experience something and not be restrained by these other things. So it doesn't mean that every day of your life is like that, because for most people it's not. They have circumstances that get in the way of that. And it doesn't mean that the things that you enjoy can't be things that, again, are sometimes associated with or stereotyped to be guardian things. Like I've told Ben before, like he knows a great deal of my free time that I enjoy a lot of nostalgic things. You know, that some people, if they looked at it, would be like, oh, this guy he talks about the good old days and he consumes all this media and things from the past. That sounds like he must be like an SJ type or whatever. But that's really not the case. It's just because if you look at the way I live my life, no SJ in their right mind would accept my life as being. They would be pointing out all of the ways that I am not fulfilling my duties and not taking care of the things that I should be taking care of, and that my apartment is a complete mess, and that I could easily I could get better organized, and my job, I just sort of skate by. I could easily have like done a better job and been impressive to my boss and all that kind of stuff, instead of just kind of doing the minimum that I have to do in order to keep my job, that kind of stuff. So there's a whole lot of things that an actual SJ would look at my life and say, what are you doing? This is not the way to live. So those surface level things where you just talk about like what hobbies you have, or even things that, people and things that you care about, like saying, I want to, I enjoy helping take care of people, or provide things for people, whatever. Just because that's something you enjoy in your life doesn't mean that you are fundamentally motivated by those things as being like your number one thing. Like I said, it goes beyond just sort of I have these tendencies or I'm interested in this. It's more like what fundamentally drives you if the other factors are not involved.
Yeah, when you say it like that, I'm like, yeah, I could take a road trip across the country. And I don't like taking vacations in the same place.
Yeah.
And I think my job requires me to be a little bit of the SJ, kind of like somebody who inspects things, notices what's missing, what procedures are missing, and then also a little bit outside my comfort zone is also the supervisor, being the person to enforce those policies. So doesn't make me a guardian necessarily just because I do it.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to my job, because part of my job is inspecting paperwork and making sure that everything has been signed and initialed that's supposed to be, and dated and all that kind of stuff. And I sometimes, when I notice something is wrong, I have to call somebody and say, I need you to fix this. But again, that's not my top instinct. I don't really enjoy having to do that. It's just part of my job, so I do it.
Yep, part of my job too.
So the part that I enjoy about my job is that, number one, there's a lot of variety, and that even within the kind of tedious paperwork that I do, I never know exactly day to day what I'm going to do on a given day. Because even if I have an idea of, well, these are probably going to be the things I'm going to work on today, the way my job is, it's an office, but there's people that come from restaurants like in and out all day. And some of those people can hand me paperwork. Some of them can ask me to give them supplies. Some of them can, ask me to print reports for them, things like that. So it's like throughout the day, I don't know who I'm going to see. I don't know what they're going to ask me for. I don't know what phone calls I'm going to take. I'll have people that call that are, telemarketing type people, but I also have people that are legitimately, need something from, actually are doing business with our company in some way, or they're a former employee that's looking for something, or somebody comes in and, has a question about, either they're seeking a job, or they're somebody who's, in law enforcement, or doing like a background check on somebody who used to work for us. Like there's all of these various things that can happen throughout the day at the office. And part of that, not knowing exactly what's going to happen through the day, keeps the job exciting in a way. And I enjoy interacting with all the various people that I talk to throughout a day. Not that some of them don't end up being annoying and, that I don't want to interact with that person anymore, but just the fact that I get to interact with various people, including some people that I already know that I like throughout a day, that's enjoyable to me. So if it was just me sitting in a room doing paperwork all day with no interaction with anyone, and it was just the same work every single day, and I just did that, I couldn't have stayed at my job as long as I have. There's no way I would have just gone completely bonkers.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think I could never do the same thing every day. I have some structure, but I give myself a lot of flexibility. It's like kind of like spurts. Like I can't I don't know what my energy is going to be like all the time. Like I sprint and then I slow down and then I sprint when I'm ready again.
Yeah, and the fundamental SJ thing is, even though obviously an individual who is best fit SJ could obviously change jobs plenty of times in their lifetime, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll stay with one job for 50 years or whatever. Especially the extroverted SJs would tend to be motivated to move up within a company more. But if they feel like they have to, they can do that, and they don't. They might complain about their job, but ultimately they still want to keep it and they still want to do it as best they can. So that's sort of the difference, is that they really can be compartmentalized, where, well, this is my job, I go every day, I do this, and I don't worry about, am I bored at my job, or is it exciting to me? Because it doesn't need to be, it's my job. There's a fundamentally different attitude about it. Whereas for me, the times of my life where I've been in jobs that I really hated, or just really got tired of, like, I had to get out of it. I couldn't keep doing that year after year. There's no way that I would be able to, for my own sanity, for health, mentally and physically, I could do it. In fact, I remember the last time I had a position like that, it was actually with the same company I'm still working for, but I got the opportunity to move into the job that I have now. But right before that happened, I was about as burned out as I could be. Like, if I hadn't gotten that job, I would have had to quit anyway, because I was so tired of it that I was actually physically ill and was just staying that way. It was like I couldn't recover from the illness. It was like this just wouldn't go away. And I think so much of it was stress, because the job was like, when I woke up to go to work, I was just dreading it, every single day. Like, I did not want to go in. I'm going to hate every minute of it. And just living that way is so unhealthy. But I think that, an SJ in that situation I'm going to say never reaches a point where they're burned out on their job, because I definitely think I've seen that before. They have a very different, the threshold for that is very different. And when they get to that point, the attitude is very much like, okay, what's a way that I can do this and still maintain what I have to maintain? So if they have people they take care of in their life, they're like, okay, I'm going to get this job that pays the same or more before I leave my old job, because I've got to make sure these things are taken care of. Whereas an SP type in that situation, they're going to take the next lifeline that comes, even if that's leaving the old thing completely in the dust. And it's not like to hurt people or anything, because they may have people they like there, but they're just in that situation. And it's like, I had to do what I had to do. I had to go regardless of what that resulted in. So it kind of seems like, when you have people that are in the public eye that suddenly do this shocking thing where everybody acts like, oh, I can't believe they just, quit out of nowhere. Like, we sometimes professional athletes that have retired, where people thought, oh, they're way too young to retire, or they're like at the top of their game, why would they retire now? It's, because they reached a point they simply just didn't want to do that anymore. And once that happens, they're not going to be like, oh, well, I don't want to keep doing this, but I can't tarnish my legacy, or I can't let down with the expectations. It's just like, I'm done. So that the attitude is different between SP and SJ athletes in that situation. Well, another thing you'll see though with SP athletes, when there's a lot of them, is that some of them will retire, and then a couple of years later they'll come back, because they'll be like, man, I can still do this, and now I find it exciting again. I'm watching other people on TV and going, man, I want to be back out there. And so they come back to varying degrees of success when they try to do it.
Yeah, when you say it that way, I can more relate to the SP, because I'm not as legacy oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, I might feel bad for the people that gonna have to pick up the pieces when I'm gone. But that's where self-preservation comes in, and it's like I'm off to the next thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up, because I mean, I know nothing obviously about your family or your personal situation, so this isn't in any way implying anything about your real life. But just as a hypothetical, if you had a family member that was not necessarily like physically abusive to you, but that basically used you over and over again as you were growing up or in your young adult life, you know, basically showed you that they were draining to you, the time you spent with them you didn't enjoy. Repeatedly, they put you in a bad situation where you didn't enjoy the experience. They were, you know, the only reason that you spent time with them was they were related to you, and there was some like tie there to your family. And then that person, like, you were free of them, you know, as an adult. You had no obligation to them anymore, but they kept coming back to you for help, for money, whatever it was, you know. Would you feel like you had to spend time with that person and help that person, or would you feel like, you know, I'm done with them?
I would not feel obligated if it was a toxic situation, and I've been in those toxic situations with family, and I moved 1,100 miles away from my family, and I didn't feel like I had any obligation to them. I mean, there are people that I miss and that I love, but I think self-preservation wins out every time.
See, not glad that you had that experience in the sense that I want to, you know, I'm glad that something bad happened to you, but I'm glad that you're able to relate enough to answer that question without even having to think too much about it. Because to me, that fundamentally is a difference in that ISFJ type people that, you know, that Keirsey called the protectors. I have seen them repeatedly continue to feel like they're obligated to help that family member, to do things for them, even though they really can't stand them and feel abused by them. But it's just such a compelling motivation in them that it's their job to do that, that they will often put themselves in to great states of unhealthiness in order to fulfill that. So, and obviously there could be somebody out there watching this that's an ISFJ that's going, oh, I wouldn't do that. You know, I'm not saying that every single one of them would necessarily do that, but I have seen over and over again that plays out that way. They might not even like want to admit it or describe it that way, but if you really got to the heart of it, you know, of how they feel about it, they would still admit, even if they don't do that for somebody, that they would feel like guilty about it or feel like they really should be doing it, but they just can't quite bring themselves to. Whereas I think any SP type, even an ISFP, you know, is generally going to react the way you did. They're like, you know, I'm not going to feel obligated to do that. If the relationship is toxic situation, they did this to me, I don't need to help them. I don't need to do something for them. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel bad. You know, you might still be like, well, I really wish I had a better relationship with this family member, but it's still different. It's not that feeling like you have any kind of job to protect them or to help them.
Yeah, I don't feel motivated that it's my responsibility. I do have a brother that he stole my checkbook, and I didn't realize he was in the throes of addiction at the time. And I was just like, that's it. Like, he got one chance and that was it. I was like, forget you, because
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm done with that. It was like, I learned my lesson. I didn't want to go back, and I never did.
Yeah, and I think at my job, one of the things when I talk about all these different people that I interact with, I do interact with a lot of guardian types, including several ISFJs, and I've repeatedly heard these stories of, you know, people in their life that are like that, and they drain them and they make their lives difficult sometimes and really miserable over this stuff. And I just, you know, I try to be sympathetic, but at the same time I'm thinking, man, I'm glad I don't let people do that to me, because that just sounds like such a miserable way to live, to have people have that power over you. it's like I'd like to have more friends than I do. I'd like to have more people that I hung out with, because I do enjoy spending time with people and having fun with people. But if you said, okay, your choice is have a lot of friends, but they're going to drag you into all of this, their personal drama that drains you and makes you miserable, versus you're going to enjoy your life but not really have, a lot of people to hang out with, I choose the second one. And that's just because, to me, the fundamental thing of having that freedom of I can choose what I do next, that's more important to me. And it doesn't mean in my case, I'm even an extrovert, and for a long time I didn't realize that. I used to think I was an introvert because of things like that, where, I kind of, and my own kind of shyness and social awkwardness, that I sort of mistook that for introversion. It's really not. But to me, that something like that, it can, either direction can be the ultimate test. My ultimate test of the fact that I know I'm an extrovert now is that I will actually have more leeway in terms of hanging out with people for the sake of spending time with them, even if some things they're saying or doing are kind of irritating to me, even if I'm kind of like, well, I'm not really enjoying what they're talking about or how they are, personality wise, but I just really want to spend some time with somebody because I'm like feeling lonely. And, so that's sort of like my ultimate test on the extroversion part. But then my ultimate test on the SP temperament is, okay, but if you're in a situation where this person, the only times that you're spending with them, they're dragging you down, making you miserable, and the only reason that you have any ties to this person is because either they're family or you work with them or you have some sort of, other sort of artificial tie to this person that isn't, you actually enjoy spending time with them. Do you want to keep doing that? The answer is no, and again, that's one of those where I've seen over and over again, the guardian types will do it anyway, even if it's just making them completely miserable.
Yeah, I think that pretty much puts me back in the ISFP camp. I definitely relate to the SP. I think, yeah, I am thinking that I go toward ISFJ when it pays the paycheck, basically.
Yeah. And just that attitude, is a very utilitarian kind of attitude about it. And that's the thing is, lest anyone watching this think, oh, well, this guy's biased because he's an SP, so he's just trying to convince her that's better or something like that. It's not the case. I have nothing against ISFJs fundamentally, and have, known plenty that I enjoyed spending time with and talking to. So it's not that I just see that type as a negative. It's more just me being brutally honest about what it is fundamental to them. So, that's the thing. In fact, and I kind of wish Morgan were here actually, because he's said that he thinks the Keirsey's thing about ISFJs and ESTPs sort of going well together is true for him, and he obviously would be able to speak to the fact that he does find ISFJs attractive personality wise, and they tend to find him attractive. So so he has some experience with that. So he would definitely not be trying to convince anyone that somehow that was like an evil type or something. No, he tries to say that NFs are the evil types. But he doesn't say that about SJ.
Oh, does he also say, Jeff, that when they're not being evil, they're useless?
What's that?
Does Morgan also? Because I've heard Morgan say that NS are also useless. So
yeah, he does say that repeatedly. Though he does still have friends that are NFs, so he doesn't completely shut them out of his life, but he does still kind of speak sarcastically about those elements a lot. So the NFs range from tolerable to completely intolerable in his mind.
I think he has said that their purpose is so that is to help other people get stuff done, something like that.
Sometimes, I guess, yeah.
Or to help other people be useful.
But yeah, that's I don't agree with him on that, and that I actually have found plenty of usefulness and enjoyment with NF types. But
That's my thinking as well. We're just sort of like getting Morgan's point of view.
Yeah, but I just mentioned that because I know that he definitely wouldn't be, telling somebody, well, you're not an SJ just because he was trying to, diss the type or whatever. It would just be being honest about what it is how they operate. There's a particular fictional character that he's admitted attraction to, that he can still repeatedly say, well, there she goes again, being attracted to the crazy dude that's wrong for her because she wants to protect him or turn him around, reform them or whatever. That's another typical thing that ISFJs tend to believe, that they can change people, that if they just provide a good influence on this wayward soul, that they'll they'll come around. There's probably quite a few NFs who think that too, but of the SJs, I would say the ISFJs are the most likely to believe that they can change people for the better if they just provide this positive influence on them. Whereas the other side, the flip side of that would be ESTJs that are probably the least likely to do that. But even ESTJs will still act like, well, if someone just has enough experience or maturity or training, they'll eventually turn into the SJ they're supposed to be. And that's another fundamental difference that you can tell between SPs and SJs. Is SPs are almost always to almost the opposite extreme degree, trying not to change people. It's like, yeah, I'd like you to hang out with me and have fun doing the thing that I want to do. I'd like somebody to be doing that with me. I might say, oh yeah, you got to check out this movie or music or book or whatever the thing is. This is cool, So they want people to like the same things they do, but at the same time, it's physically painful to me, when somebody appearing like they're changing themselves or doing something they don't enjoy just to try to please me. I look at that and I'm like, man, that bothers me. I don't want this person to do that. I'm like, do it because you want to do it, not because you feel obligated to do it. So I'm constantly the opposite feeling on me, rather than saying, well, I want to change this person for the better. I'm thinking, man, I don't want to get in this person's way of expressing themselves, of being who they are already. That's kind of my attitude about it. It's I like to get to know people for who they are, not try to change them into something else.
Yeah, that makes me cringe. I like to say, my favorite saying is live and let live. Really, I don't think that it's up to me to make people want to change. I want them to want it.
Yeah, I don't know who it was that actually first said that phrase, obviously, but I'm sure it was an SP of some kind. The live and let live.
Right then. So Shannon, you've got the master here, in my opinion. The master of Keirsey temperament and getting to the motivation of somebody outside of Enneagram.
Yeah, see, Ben kind of tricked me. He made me seem like because I asked him earlier in the week, am I going to be the next one that answers those Enneagram questions? And then he's like, oh, are you free at 2:00 Saturday? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, probably. And then he's like, now we're going to do this other thing.
Well, yeah, it wasn't a deliberate tactic. It's just all these things going on, and then I was thinking about, maybe we could do that beforehand, and we had this thing with. Yeah. We were going to go through the ISFJ profile with Jami, Natalie, and Shannon for a comparison, and then that didn't work, and then I was sort of scrambling around for an alternative event.
But if you needed more proof that I'm not a J, and the fact I can roll with it, not have any problem with changing, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I just felt like ribbing him about that, since he was praising me as the master of temperament or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're great at explaining it and getting it into the real world nitty gritty.
As I'm talking about it, here's another. As if again I needed more proof of this. while I'm talking about those things, I agree with Ben. Like, I feel like I'm saying all these great things, but then if I listen to it later, I always think it sounded stupid, whatever it is I'm saying now. So that's, and that's the thing is, I think it's so much like with SPs in terms of that thing about us living in the moment. Like, I don't know what it feels like to do anything else because I just always have been, but it's in the days before people had the technology to record so much of what they did, you know, it probably didn't come up as much because it was just like, oh yeah, I remember I sounded cool. And then when you have that ability to like play it back and then I listen to it, I'm like, oh man, I sounded dumb. And then I want to like argue with myself or like say it in a better way or whatever, you know, that I think of when I'm listening to it. So I'm so in the moment that even when I'm listening to this stuff from the past, I want to change it. You know, I want to be back in that moment. And that's the thing when I talked about this nostalgia earlier. It's not that I'm always like pining for the old days, like, oh, I want to like literally live in the past. It's more like I just want the past things that I enjoyed to be the present moment. Like I could sit here and talk about plenty of crappy things that happened in those times that I wouldn't want to repeat. So it's not that I really want to go back to that. It's just that I want to like, oh, now I can consume these things and enjoy them in the present without having those other things that were sucky about then. Like I can watch TV shows that I watched as a kid or missed as a kid without having to worry about my parents coming and telling me what to do, and I got to turn it off and go do something else. Like I can watch it when I feel like watching it. So it's almost sort of like this weird kind of revenge against all the people who used to make me mad because I'm like, now you don't have any power over me. I can do what I want to do. You know.
And you're also replacing those memories a bit by sort of like the experience of the program. You might think about how you've watched it now rather than the
Yeah, and
association.
it's so like I can focus better on things now that I hear songs that I heard as a kid that I couldn't understand the lyrics, and now I hear it and like not hearing it like a bunch of times and studying it or anything, but just hearing it one more time and like, wow, now I can understand what he's saying. Like out of nowhere, it suddenly makes sense. Like as in literally, I can now understand the lyrics, the words that are being said that I couldn't 20 years ago, whatever it was, for whatever reason. So I'm like, it's like a whole nother experience.
So, Jeff, what's it like for, say, A View to a Kill?
What's that?
What about the lyrics of A View to a Kill? Because they can get a little bit purple.
Purple?
Yeah, in like, was it? It's very metaphorical language in A View. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm being terrible. Back on track. Because those are just examples of lyrics that can get very weird.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like the meanings of things are necessarily clearer to me now, although some things might be, just in terms of me knowing that that's a metaphor at all,
Right.
as opposed to just taking it completely literally. But I'm just saying like I can actually hear, like understand the words that are being said. Like what used to sound like hama 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 suddenly sounds like I'm walking down the street. I'm like, oh, now that's what he said. You know, like it happened just the other day with AC/DC song "Money Talks." Like honestly, like the beginning of that song just sounded like he was going. And like all of a sudden now I'm like, wait a minute, he's talking about furs and diamond rings. Like I can hear these words. I'm like, for the first time in my life.
Yeah, and that might be a Dario thing where he said that people who are actually in professions where they have to listen, they have this wiring, and you just maybe develop that part of the brain where it's like you're a lot better in interpreting the same sounds, and it's like now it becomes intelligible speech.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know exactly the reason, but I'm guessing that less distractions is part of it. Less fear. You know, that's what I always say the missing thing in all these typological discussions. You rarely hear the fear mentioned, but it's such a big part of life. And when you grow up, when I grew up listening, if I'm listening to rock or rap or something, when I still lived with my father, I had to always be on the lookout whether he was going to be coming in the room because I'd have to turn it down or turn it off before he did. You know, because he didn't want me listening to any of that stuff. So it was the fear factor. You know, it was always a part of everything. I re-listened to that video we did, Ben, with me and my brother when we were talking about my father and some of that stuff. So some of that stuff is fresh on my mind. In terms of what I talked about, where there was something I needed to ask him or talk to him about, and it was always that dread of like, is this going to be one of those days where he just flies off the handle at anything that I say to him? And so it was such a huge part of my life that, you know, the fear element, that now I have a lot less. I'm not saying I have no fear, because I still do, but it's so much less than what it used to be. Now my fears are a little bit more abstract. You know, it's like, you know, yeah, the building I'm in could suddenly fall down, or somebody could like break in and shoot me or something. But these things are not very likely. So it's not that they can't happen, but I don't like spend every moment in fear of such things, because it's like, well, if that happens, it happens. But all I can do is react as best as I can. I can't sit here worrying about all these possible things that could happen. You know, it's like the people that, you know, when something happens halfway across the world, and it's like, well, you know, this thing happened in the Middle East or something, is this going to mean somebody's going to like blow up something in America or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, it's possible somebody could do that, but you know, there's things that happen all the time. But you know, I can't live my life in fear that this could happen, that I'm going to like go in the store and somebody's going to take out a gun and start shooting everybody or something like that. I mean, it's possible to happen, but it's not still very probable to happen.
So Shannon, you hearing this, like a little bit of six wing in there from Jeff, a little bit of history and a little bit of six wing as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, where's the 6? Is it tri-type?
Are you saying metaphorically, Ben, that I was flapping my 6 wing?
No, I'm just saying, because there's a little bit of like life, because there's like the nature thing of the 6, and then there's the nurture stuff of what you've actually lived through, and then people who are not a 6 will probably gonna have similar feelings. So maybe if your father was their father. And I'd just like to say here, I think Jeff's a master of Keirsey and Shannon's a master of Enneagram.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, we could end up shifting and spending, you know, other time, you know, since I've helped her confirm what she already knew about being an ISFP, you know, maybe she can talk to me about Enneagram stuff, because I still understand that the least of any of the, well, okay, there's sort of like deep Jungian functional analysis that I don't understand, but I don't particularly care.
Hey, I don't mind
not really
talking
into the fee fi fo fum that much.
Yeah.
And I'm not really, I guess I could say I'm not really into Enneagram either, but I'm still curious about things related to, because some of the stuff I've read, you know, the type 7 stuff, I'm like, yeah, a lot of this does resonate with me. It's usually one way or the other. Either I'm like, this is pretty spot on, or it's completely wrong. It's like there's not a lot of gray area. It's one or the other. So I always looked at it as, if there's something that's completely wrong in a type 7 description, it's usually because this person is looking at Enneagram types and not looking at temperament or Myers-Briggs. They're not looking those lenses on it. So they're saying, oh, well, this is a type 7 thing, and it may be for some type 7s, but it's probably like a different type of type 7, if you know what I mean. It's probably like an ENTP type 7 or an ENFP type 7 or something. So those things that relate to more of those type of people, I'm going to be like, yeah, I don't get that. That doesn't, because one of the things I've read is stuff about like, you know, it has been the exact opposite of what they say about SPs, because they'll be like, SPs live in the moment, and they'll say type 7s are constantly thinking about the future and neglect the present. And I'm like, no. So.
Well, if you want, we could go through.
Oh yeah, I mean, I will retitle this event and go with the flow.
Well, you know, don't do that, Ben, because I know you'll end up, instead of retitling it, you'll just add like 5 more things in the parentheses, and it's going to go off the page.
I will retitle it completely, because we don't have to go through the second half of the ISFP.
You'll add like an extra line of code that no one understands with number signs and decimals and open parentheses.
I'm more likely to do with that. I could just retitle this as Jeff is on a roll, and Shannon, and it's a beautiful event. All completely improvised.
I'm going to ask you two to talk amongst yourselves for a bit, because I'm going to have to
leave for a minute, but I'll be back.
Okay, that's okay.
I think.
Right, I can sort of get Shannon your feedback on what Jeff said there.
I think there's a lot of 6 motivation there.
Yeah. Oh, and also in terms of like what he said there, comparing ISFP and ISFJ, and you get that sort of like deep dive into the core of motivations, put in a very practical, sensory way of what it looks like in the actual world. And so, yeah, Jeff is my Keirsey mentor.
Yeah, that was good. That was good to see, like, the motivations as coming from inside of me versus what the world wants of me. Because that's where I was kind of seeing the SJ was what the world is asking me to be more SJ-ish. But my preference is probably more SP.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a big lesson I learned from Jeff. He did a video called ESFP Preference versus Reality, in terms of like looking at what he would like to do versus his behaviors and how his behaviors were limited by his particular circumstances. And as he went through the original Keirsey profile in like 1978, and because he said that, and he did a comparison between how he related to the profile when he was about 18, and then how he relates to the profile now. And he said that when he read it, was like everything that was to do with what the ESFP wanted, he related to, but not necessarily to the specific behaviors. And so it might have something in the original profile, such as like, oh, there's a something like go more towards stereotypes. So there's a party-like atmosphere around. I can't remember what it was, but it was like something that had to do with specific behaviors and opportunities to enact those behaviors, which were not there. And a particular bit I remember was, I think Jeff said it was like his 18th birthday party, and there was loads of people around him, but he actually didn't enjoy it that much because he didn't feel that they were there for him. So it wasn't just the fact of being around people. There had to be that specific connection thing. And I didn't think of it at the time, but now I'm thinking, that's like a theme of FI, connection, a theme of the FPs.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of the SX function.
Yeah, like me, sexual 7, and like Jeff looking at like the Enneagram 7 description is like, he doesn't relate to the MP stuff, and I don't relate to the SP stuff. But in terms of the 7 for me, that future planning, you know what I mean? Oh, we could do this, and the defense mechanisms of the 7 with the rationalization and making things feel better. That's like when I tell people about CBT, it's like, well, that's just like my mind in terms of like, you reframe it and you feel better about it, but you don't get the problem solved. Because it's a feel better defense. Maybe we could do a cartoon of that, like when you got like a 7 and they've reframed this terrible situation around them, and maybe they're burning, maybe they're burning on the stake, and it's reframed as, and it's like, no, deal with this problem. Yeah.
Reframe it. Maybe this needed to happen.
You know, well, at least I've not got cold feet any longer. Not this situation. Right. Yeah. So it just shows you how these systems can give you an angle into the insight of somebody, and that, say, Jeff here is not just repeating the stuff in the Keirsey books, that he's actually using it as a tool to understand life and understand people, and sort of like deepen it. And you're similar in that you've used Enneagram to do something similar, because both Keirsey and Enneagram are going towards people's core motivators. And that's why I think it's good to combine those two, why those two systems are complementary. And also why Keirsey is an interesting bridge between Jungian type and Enneagram. For that reason. where there's a part of Keirsey where it's like, yeah, at the 16 type level, it does correspond. And yet there's also some interesting comparisons and nuances with Enneagram. So, for instance, a 6SJ versus a 6SP and how that manifests differently.
Yeah. I think that all of the systems gives you a better composite of somebody's personality.
Yep.
Like what Jeff was saying, like with, oh, my mind just went blank. Anyways, he said something and it was good.
There was a lot of that today. It was on a roll.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff. So yeah, I mean, when he comes back, we can do some Enneagram stuff. And yeah, I'll retitle this because this is what I thought. It's like, oh, we're just doing an event with Shannon and Jeff, and it will be gold. And it's like, and it has been. So there you go. Sometimes it works. It's like you get the combinations right. I just think when I see there's certain people, when I think they have these qualities about them and these qualities about them, I think, oh, they'll go really well. And like that eventually happened with like they got on well, Dario and Victor, but it's like after 5 years, now they got this synergy with like DC and H, and it's like, yes, it's there. Dario is seeing the DC and H subtypes in the brain. And it's like, and I can sort of like put that in the faces of the people who are the doubters. And it's like, look at this. And then the people who are doubters, it's like, oh yeah, Dario's just making it up. And then I could say, look, Amanda has emulated it. So there we go. Anyway, that's a digression, but I like to. I don't know why I brought that up. Why did I bring that up? There was a reason to bring. Oh yeah, bringing people together.
Different
Yes.
systems. Oh
yeah. It was seeing the people can go well together. Like these two will go well together. So I was thinking today, oh right, Jeff and Shannon will go well together. And it was also when you said, oh, I got different thoughts between Guardian and Artisan, and I don't know where I am. Maybe because you were comparing specific behaviors of the types, and then Jeff's able to get to the core. Jeff, you are back.
Yeah, that's usually one of the easier ones to tell, because if you know that you're a concrete type, then it's usually like it's sort of like I'm speaking your language anyway, so we can get down to the bottom of it. Whereas it's a little bit tougher with the intuitives because they're always kind of being like, well, this is how I feel now, but what about on this other plane of existence?
Oh, I'd love to bring that up with you, Shannon. You've got a lot of these NF interests, and I wonder if you do them, if you've noticed that you're different from the other people in these things, where it's like, oh, they're doing it in an NF way, I'm doing it in an SP way. Because then you've also said that you score as like INFJ when you take tests. So we can talk about that. That seems interesting because you have got these, like your interests, people might go NF.
Or we're probably talking about like astrology and tarot.
Yeah, and all that.
Yeah. I do see like a lot of similarity between Tamara and myself as far as interest there. Yeah. I test most often as INFJ on the free quizzes for whatever that's worth.
It's one of them weird things. Yeah.
Actually done the official MBTI though?
I haven't done any of the official tests in any system.
Well, I definitely don't ever say that it's 100% accurate because Ben ends up as a J on there because, he's a wannabe J.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's for off air. But I think I did it one time. Did we do it again? And maybe I came out as a P. I know that I came out as a P on about a year ago. I went through the Keirsey temperament sorter, and I came out as a P.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a little easier on that one. But what I've noticed with the Keirsey sorter is if I give it to somebody at work, they almost always end up as a J because it's like, oh, this is like work mode. So they tend to not be completely honest about what they really would rather be doing. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
often the issue with that. But I think if you can ever get a hold of it or find a way to do it, Ben, if you took the step 2, then it might, you probably, I'm not saying I know for sure, but I would say you likely would end up, scoring perceiver, but you would see, the other side, like those other out of preference parts, or vice versa. If you scored J, it would be like more of the bars would actually be going the other direction. Something like that. It would be kind of mixed, is what I'm thinking in that
Yeah.
area, as opposed to my PJ where everything's on the P side. Uh, but on the TF, I'm still like, I think of myself as like 100% feeler, but I had that entire bar in the middle of the step 2 going the other direction, because it's really the part of the subcategory, whatever you want to call it, of TF that's like the most involved with the SP temperament, because it's about like challenging things and not just taking things uh, as people tell them to you. It's kind of my BS alarm, or whatever you want to call it. you know,
I,
which I joked on the diagram and called it my T middle finger, because it was all the other bars are going the other way, and then the middle one is going that way. So
well, since you bring it up, I'll show you that, and then we could do a little bit of Enneagram stuff with Shannon. No, Shannon, tell us about that NF thing again, because like I'm curious about it. So yeah, you said tarot, and so you've probably heard the NFs around you then went talk about tarot. I'm just wondering, do they like say things where it's like maybe their approach to it is different from yours, or because you've also said, because Tamsy's really INFJ and really NF. I say she has the highest NF uh NF WPM, NF words per minute of anyone I've
yeah, I
encountered.
just want to say, like, I interrupt here, but that's one of those areas where I'm a little bit susceptible to the bias, the stereotype, because there was somebody the other day in the ESFP group that I asked my usual questions to find out, because she was saying the same thing, like, I'm not sure what type I am or whatever, and I asked all these things and determined she really did seem like an ESFP to me. And I didn't look at her Facebook profile until after that, because I didn't want anything on there to like bias me and like my interpretations of her answers. And then afterwards I did, and like the first like 7 or 8 things I see is like about tarot readings and crystals and stuff, and I'm just like, man, if I'd seen this, I totally would have been like, so I admit that I definitely can be biased by things like that.
One of the things in the last couple of years I've sort of thought about as doing atypical things but in a typical way. So for example, you might have an ISTJ artist, which you might associate more with like artisan, but they do it in an ISTJ way. I just wondered if there's something in Shannon's interests which might say NF interests but maybe done in an artisan way.
So, like with tarot, what I like about it is that I can look at images, I can look at what's there. So, maybe it's SE, and I use that to tell a story of like, what is it about this image that's sticking out for this particular situation? And I can say, oh, well, it's a black cat walking across the path of the woman. Oh, it must mean bad luck. Or, just something like, I like using the images that way. And I don't necessarily think that I go into any kind of NI, maybe, but not. I'm not trying to tell this big, elaborate story. More like what's concrete.
Yeah.
In this, and what's concrete for the person that I'm talking to. Like, I'll pull 3 cards for them, past, present, future. What's in these images that stands out that is mirroring their life right now. And then with astrology, it does seem to be an NF type hobby. trying to think of the way that I use it. It's I mostly use it like, okay, what's going on in my life right now and what planet can I blame on? Just learning astrology. So I'm not quite sure as far as typology wise how I don't know if I can describe it based on my typing.
Yeah, what I had to sort of learn over the years was that just having a particular interest or hobby, I remember one of Ben's phrases, it's a data point, but it's not,
Yes.
like the be all end all. So you can have, you know, you could have 4 people in a room that are all doing the same thing. They're all into the same activity, but they could each be a different temperament and they're all getting something different out of the exact same thing. And they're approaching it slightly differently, you know. So they could all say on the surface, yeah, I'm into this particular activity or hobby, whatever it is, but they all have different reasons and they all have different things they're getting out of it. So unless you really start asking those questions and getting to the bottom of that, then you don't really know why. I remember when I first started asking my son questions because I had, yeah, there's my T middle finger there. I had like read the book Please Understand Me Too, and I had looked at some of the stuff, and I had sort of thought about my son and what temperament or type he might be, but it was just sort of through my own filter, through my own biases. So I was like, well, it was like 8 years old at the time. I just started asking him questions to try to be as open as I could. So I looked at the sections in the Keirsey book, and Please Understand Me Too, about the children, of each temperament, like how they act as children. And I said, well, there's a lot of things that seem like him in the artisan child, but there's also quite a few in the rational child that seem to describe him a lot. And I know that as a child, I kind of fit more what it says about the idealist child than I did the artisan. So I'm like, I realize this is not, 100% going to indicate it. So when I asked him about those things, I was asking him like what he enjoyed about them. Like each of the things that were in there, it was like, what do you? So I tried to be as open as I could. Like, what do you enjoy that you do? Like, what the things that you think are fun. Like, why do you think they're fun? What is it that you like best about it? And I would listen to his answer, and then I'd ask him, you know. It's as probing a question as I could about like what it is he really got out of those things, to see if these other things were in there, because if he had, as a kid's 8 years old, they're not going to usually psychoanalyze themselves all that much. Well, I take that back. If they're a S type, they're not going to. So some of the things I've heard from the N types, they really, especially enough to like really have started to do that by that age. But the way they express it can still not necessarily be one that's going to delve into all that stuff. It's going to be more surface level if you can get them to talk about it. So the good thing about my son was he was talkative enough that and enjoyed sometimes talking about what he enjoyed doing and why. So it wasn't too difficult to do that, because honestly, the first impression I got from him back in those days, I was still calling myself an ISFP, and my first guess for Morgan, believe it or not, was ESFP, because I said, well, he's a whole lot like me. He just seems to be more extroverted, was just my interpretation. So that was my initial guess. But then when I got into, it was really that year, I think between 8 and 9 years old, where he really started to show more of the T preferences. And when I would ask him questions about things, and before he had actually taken the test for the first time, I don't remember how old he was when he first really did one of those. But
Jeff, there's a bit of a scratchy noise. It was, like.
Oh, it's probably my rubbing on the side of my iPad case here was too close to the microphone, I'm guessing.
Right, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Try not to do that. Since I can't hear it, it didn't bother me at all. So
Uh, uh, please go back on your roll. I'll go through these
Well,
slides. Then I can ask Shannon some interesting things
yeah,
about
it's
that
probably a
sheet.
good time to stop me because I was kind of rambling, but I think I was just talking about like when someone is open and listens about, what actually are the reasons why someone likes something, then you
Yeah.
get more to the heart of like their temperamental type. If you just go off, oh, well, this person's into this hobby, so that means they're this type, that you're gonna have too much confirmation bias there, where you're going off something without really getting into the reasons why.
So I would say, Shannon, that these are the different scales in the MBTI of the JP. We could go through these with you to like see how you relate to these, or maybe we could do a separate event on this. But I think pressure prompted might be one for you.
Yeah, I definitely I respond to pressure. I'm more of a procrastinator.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wait till something feels right, but then when there's a pressure of a deadline coming up, then I'm gonna work quicker to get it done. I don't I don't do well with really loose timelines because I tend to think, oh, I can just put it off. I'm
Whereas I
gonna
think,
do something fun first.
yeah, it'd be nice if like Natalie or like Jami were here for the comparison, where I think they would like want to do it earlier on in order to avoid the pressure of it.
Yeah, I was just talking
Sometimes
about that.
it depends. If it's an attorney, like if I'm at work and an attorney is like being very much like a bulldog, I want to get that done and over with because it's too uncomfortable. So there are certain things. If I'm in line with 10 other people to get a shot in my arm and I know it's going to be painful with a needle, I want to go first and get it over with.
Right. Jeff, you were going to say something brilliant.
Well, I was thinking that I was talking about that, and I was thinking it must have been the last video we did, which might have been the one we were going over the step 2, and then I was like, well, actually, maybe it was when I was doing the Skype call with the personal trainer guy because I was talking about, well, in whatever I was in, I was talking about where basically I've said time work has been stressful lately, but it's also been more exciting because there's been a lot of stuff like kind of that has been the pressure prompting for sure. And like I'm the type of person, if you were like, you really want me to get a lot of work done in a short period of time, the best way is to be like, you need to get these 6 things done like by 2 o'clock, and I'm much more likely to do that to get those things done than if you said it's due at 2 o'clock 3 months from now, but you have these 30 things to do, because like I'm going to put off those things as long as I possibly can in order to still get them done on time. So the more time you give, so some people will be like, oh well, if I give this person plenty of time to get this done, then they'll feel less pressure, so they'll work better. But I'm the type of person that exactly the opposite is true. I actually work faster when I have more pressure. The one time that my boss actually gave me like a complete ultimatum where he's like, these things, it was an evaluation where I was going to get a raise, but I only got it if I finished those particular tasks by a certain date. And if I didn't, it was like basically forfeited that raise for an entire year, because it was only evaluated once a year. So it was like, if you're going to get this raise, you have to get these things done by this day. And I did. I came in like through the weekend, all the way, basically it was like the day of the deadline, like
25 minutes to go kind of thing. It was like some movie where they got like the race against the clock, you know. So that was, and that's like the ultimate example of that, where I'm like, I had this put to me, and my, you know, my boss is an SP type 2, he's an ISTP. So I think it's some point of working with me for first couple years, like it clicked at some point, the way to get me motivated to do something, because it was a way that would motivate him also. So he figured out that it would work on me.
Part of sometimes when I'm late, it's like part of it is like laziness and procrastination, but then other part of it is like, oh, I'm up against the clock, will I make it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a challenge, you know, when you have this thing where you're like at the end of it. I can say that, and like I was talking earlier about the job, like I would rather have that pressure, that challenge for something I enjoy doing more. Like that would make it more fun, but I can still, like, it's within the circumstances that I have of my boring, tedious job. It can still be like, if I'm going to get a lot of work done, this is how to do it. And then at the end, it's like, I feel like, man, like, I feel like I really knocked that stuff out. But then I'm also like, man, I wish I had something much more interesting to do than that. So it's like, I got this headache and feeling like exhausted, and I didn't even do anything that was that fun, but whatever, you know.
So I was just thinking now about opportunities to improvise even within that sort of like routine structure. And then when I thought of the word improvise, that made me think of like Shannon's approach to, especially with the tarot. I thought that can be very consistent with, say, ISFP and artisan, in like improvising a story in this situation, and you've got that aspect. And then in terms of understanding the person, and it's like, yeah, I can see this being artisan is like as a tool to like improvise, come up with a story, and to help the other person. That can definitely be a NF typical thing done for artisan reasons. On the function level, there are some interesting similarities between ISFP and INFJ, and they're in the same benefit ring with INTP actually. So
Yeah, the stuff you said about using the images to tell a story, it's like very ISFP sounding. Because I mean, Keirsey talked
yeah,
about
and
like using whatever things are at, like almost exactly what she said. Using the tools at your disposal and combine them in ways that create something. That's like the number one thing for ISFPs on this. Just finding that way to create something that is cool or beautiful for somebody. In some way.
I've got scans of this, but I won't show it on screen because like Dario publishes the book and he'd be annoyed with me. But I can read a little bit out of ISFP and about how they sort of like bring little elements together. So INTP, like me, will like try to combine the theories and like integrate them together. But then also here, this is how ISFP brings things together. Theme is composing, using what is at hand to make things work. Want to pull things together in a cohesive whole that has impact, vary their actions as they integrate ideas, information, or materials into a finished project. Very focused on producing just the right outcome that meets the needs of others or the project and accomplishes the goal. At the same time, they have a sense of timing or for harmonizing divergent views so that everyone works together to obtain the best outcome. So that's behind the scenes for the artisans.
Yeah, that sounds like me because, okay, here I am. Here's my tools.
Yep.
So I wait for the right timing for somebody to ask for help. And I say, oh, that sounds like exactly this. And then I share. And I like to use from all of the systems.
Right. So
yeah.
Here's the weird thing. So in terms of functions, ISFP and INTP, they're meant to have completely different valued functions. But that thing that I noticed in Model G, where it's like, and also in Keirsey, where it's like INTP and ISFP are similar. They're both adaptive inquirers, which means adaptive in terms of doing it their own way, and informing. And so there's actually a group. Keirsey came up with a new group of 4 in his final book, and one of the 4 was adaptive inquirers, which are SFPs and NTPs, because they're both informing and adaptive. And I was just thinking there that with so even though Shannon resembles a type which is supposed to be any break and doesn't like the any thing that much, she's also like combining various sources together the way I would. So there's an interesting similarity there. And one of the things you've got in Model G is like INTP can shift to ISFP and ISFP can shift to INTP. And but if we look at what they're good at, you can see, say, an ISFP designer, they're improvising a piece of work of art, they might have to stop, stand back, think more strategically about, like, say, the whole structure of something. And so you can see how those 2 roles are complementary, the designer and the composer. So there's some interesting comparisons between those 2 types, ISFP and INTP. Because there are other factors out of that's one of the things with these models. People can create a beautifully elaborate model for those factors that they are considering, but there might be other factors outside that are just as important. It's like, and Keirsey notices a lot of these factors that the Jungian systems don't take into account, such as directive versus informing. That is a dichotomy out there that's not in the Jungian
Morgan
type.
and I had that came up when we were talking the other night a lot, and that same conversation I was talking about earlier when I was telling him about, why it appeared like I, quote unquote, became a guardian to him. I also talked about the way that he said things to me, and because he talked about, I was inconsistent in my reactions when he would like tell me how to solve a problem, and I said, well, it's very much about the way that you say it to me. And he even acknowledged that before I even said the word, he was like, yeah, that directive and informative thing or whatever, because even like people that are one way or the other, they even define those in different ways because they won't see themselves as being directed when they really are. I think, it's kind of one of those things where the more somebody is that way, the less that they understand the other or sort of see the other that way. So they don't look at themselves as telling somebody what to do, because it just comes so naturally to them that that's just how you speak to people, and vice versa. So like somebody like, say, an INFP might be the least likely to try to tell somebody what to do. And so on those occasions where they do, they sound like the most awkward or angry or just, really, it's like, where did that come from? Because people don't expect them to talk that way. And so somebody who is more generally directive all the time, people will often not see them as, oh, they've got a bad temper or they whatever. Whereas somebody who is not generally that way, on those occasions they do, they'll be like, wow, where did that come from? So they have the impression will be that person is this, kind of powder keg, because it takes a lot to drive them to getting into a directive state. And so when they do, they come across as out of their element, you might say. So they come across really like explosive because it's not how they normally are. Whereas somebody who just like an ESTJ that so naturally gives orders all the time doesn't a lot of the time doesn't come off that way as being like an explosive tempered person, because it's just so natural that they're always just saying, you do this, you do that, you do that, it's just the way they speak all the time.
Yeah. So the interesting thing with the interaction styles, folks, and it's best to remember this: ST is an NJ is a directive. That when you bring together the interaction styles with the Keirsey temperaments, you get the 16 types. And there's some interesting outliers. So, for example, usually thinking types are directive, except for the NTPs. We're informing. And that might be something like this. Well, you could do it like this. You could do it like that. We don't like to see one right answer to direct someone to. Whereas NFJs are the only directive feeling types. And there you can see, well, they think they know what's best for the other person and they're guiding them, they're predisposed to mentoring, and they've got that NI thing of that's the truth, that's the direction to go in.
That's why they say ENFJs make the best cult leaders.
Yes, that's the best good way of putting it, Jeff. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you don't have to do the role. So it's like ESTJs make the best supervisors. INTPs make the worst. It's hardest for INTP to enact the supervisor role because you've got to do a lot of attention to detail and shout at people.
Yeah, I worked with an INTP when I was still working in the actual restaurants making food, where he was one of those people where he was a nice guy, but he was so frustrating because he would start 18 sentences and not finish any of them. So when you're in like an environment where it's kind of a fast-paced restaurant thing, you got to get to the point to get things done. And he would just be like, well, I was wondering if you, I think if you, well, if you looked at it like, it was like he would start all these things and be like, what? Just say it. But it was like his brain would go so much faster than his mouth. And so by the time he was getting the words out, he'd already jumped to the next thing and he couldn't like catch up to himself.
Oh, wait a minute. The interaction styles are absolutely part of Keirsey's theory. It's just that he didn't give them a name. He's got it in there, folks. He came up with it in this book, Portraits of Temperament, in 1986. I think you've got this book, haven't you, Jeff? Portraits of Temperament.
No, I don't think I have that.
Yeah, and also he was writing descriptions of the 16 types in 1978. And what he did is he combined Jung and temperament, and he actually he was a little bit more warm on Jung in 78, but you see he got a lot of aggro with the MBTI people when he was getting old and he didn't want all the aggro. But he had role directive, and so he noticed that, and that was something that was in like these other interaction style systems like social styles. And so it's absolutely in there in 1998 in Please Understand Me Too, where it's got, and we've done it with, I've gone through it with, we did it with Jami and Natalie, and I think Shannon was there. I can't remember. Were you there, Shannon, when we did the logistical intellect? No, but you were there when we did the artisan intellect, didn't we? Right, and we said those that are directive tend towards the expediter roles of ESTP and ISTP, and then you've got the informing roles that are more natural to ESFP and ISFP. And so what you've got there with Keirsey is an interesting thing where you've got a natural predisposition towards 16 roles, and you have a similar system in Victor's where he's got social missions, social adaptation. And you've got an interesting concept in Carl Jung about individuation, people sort of like developing into certain roles in society. And Carl Jung even wrote, the dominant function is either that most gifted by nature or the one that ensures most social success. And the way Carl Jung writes about it is like, if you have somebody and there's no society around them, you're not going to develop a lead function, because it's a lead function that provides a function in society. So it's not, so you've got that interesting intermingling combination of nature and nurture. And Carl Jung actually wrote, functions develop, they're not static. And Dario Nardin, if you look at Dario Nardin's research, it's like, yes, the brain changes. So it matches up with life experience, where it's like, well, you've seen somebody's get better at a certain skill, better at a certain thing, And it's like, yeah, the brain has to change to accommodate that. Else, where else has the change occurred? Except in the brain. What's this question? Yeah, it is. It's just that Linda Bones came up with it. Well, she extracted it and made it a system on its own. And I can prove that by what it says in the book, because she actually says that where she got it from. So Shannon, did you want to like get that like Enneagram thing out and like ask Jeff a question?
Jeff, you ready to be typed?
Sure. As long as you don't mind me eating at the same time.
You're allowed to eat.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. We'll use what I have, what tool I have here.
Yep.
Tools are good.
Nice callback. I might reconfigure the screen just to show something on screen, but it's not relevant to this Enneagram thing, and I won't say anything about it. It's just for the audience so they can see what Linda Bones wrote about Keirsey. So just ignore it, but it's just for the audience.
All right. Okay, Jeff. Let's see, what are the rules here? Score each of the following statements according to how true or applicable to you it is on the following scale. 1, not at all true. 2, seldom true. 3, somewhat true. 4, generally true. And 5, very true. And then it looks like there's 15 questions per type. All right. So the first question, Jeff, is most people see me as a serious, no-nonsense person. And when all is said and done, I suppose I am.
Right off the bat, it's really hard for me to answer questions that are like about how most people see me, because I don't know how most people
Fair
see
enough. I know I have a hard time with that too.
I'm going to defer it to like the two of you, because you're people that see me sometimes.
No nonsense. Ben, do you see Jeff as no nonsense?
No.
Or do you see a lot of nonsense?
I see creative stuff. Sometimes he does some like puns that are like gold, and some ones are like, oh, I'll have to stop myself from groaning.
It probably depends on what situation somebody tends to see me in. Like, there's people at work that probably do see me as no nonsense, but those people probably don't encounter me very much. So just from that, I would say probably it's going to be somewhere towards the bottom. I'll say 2 on that.
Okay. Question 2. I've always tried to be honest and objective about myself, and I'm determined to follow my conscience, no matter what the cost.
Man. It's always tough when they put always in something. Because I always see the nuances of stuff. So that one's got to be somewhere in the middle, I'd say. 3, I guess.
Okay. Question 3. While there is some part of me that can be wild, generally speaking, that just hasn't been my style.
Wild in what sense? Yeah, already like, I'm not a fan of these questions, but
wild, like taking risks, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So I'm answering how much I agree that it's not my style to be wild.
Yeah.
I guess another 3 on that one. Somewhere in the middle.
Question 4. It seems that I am living with a judge inside my head. Sometimes the judge is wise and discerning, but often it is simply stern and harsh.
Like a judge of myself or other people?
A judge inside your head. So it could be, it doesn't say, so it could be judging yourself
No.
or judging others.
I guess I got to say 3 to that one too then.
Wait a minute. There might be a bit of a follow-up about that, because there might be certain things. So, for instance, what Jeff has said before with the artisans, it's like they have a thing that they do, but they want to be really good at that thing. And so there might be a judge in that area, but not about being neat and tidy or other things. It's like, depends on the thing that they value. It's not like they've got a judge in their head about everything.
That's why I think tests in general about stuff are tough for SPs, because we are like the most situational about stuff. So it's like, well, tell me the details and I'll tell you how I would do.
So Shannon, that's like when we do these tri-type tests with Jonathan, we always like follow up on the questions, because it's like, it's just really a framework for like as a tool to then, and the follow-up is the secret sauce.
And I'm glad I have you for that, because I'm not the follow-up person.
Okay.
Question 5. I feel that I've paid a great price for trying to be perfect.
No. 1.
Okay.
I've never tried to be perfect.
Question 6. I like to laugh as much as anyone. I should do it more often. So maybe I should just say you agree to both parts of the question. Because I think it kind of splits it into two. Like, if you like to laugh, but then maybe you do it enough. If that makes any sense.
That's a good point, because there was one I did earlier in the week that was like that, where I was like, well, if you split this, I would agree to one part, but not the second part.
I'll just go back on that. You know, when you said about perfectionist. So, for instance, you might have, say, an artisan where there's a particular thing they're into. Say they're a musician or in sport. In one particular aspect of them, if you just saw them in isolation, go, "Whoa, you're really a perfectionist." But like the rest of their life, it's like what they value and how much that thing is part of their self-esteem that they are like a perfectionist about. Whereas there are those other people like perfectionist about a lot of stuff, and the artisan might look like, that's not important that you have to have that table completely aligned, like the knife and fork with the edge or something and perfectly straight.
Yeah, right. I think we're more likely to we want to be the best at what it is we're interested in, because it's like, if you can't be the best, why bother, kind of thing, at the thing we want to most do. But it's not like, in general, I don't believe perfection is really possible in anything, so, because you can always be better.
I think you said that's what, was it Michael Jordan said that about his thing wasn't about winning, but like executing a thing perfectly. And some people criticized him for that, but I think you said that you perfectly understood that. It was something like that. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's another one of those things where it's impossible for me to get across to people how of a no-brainer it seems like to me about Michael Jordan's type, because that's like the essence of ISTP in so much he says when he's open about stuff. And I also use him as an example of like people saying, oh, well, people, if it's like celebrities or public figures, they'll type them as something that they want them to be because they want them to be their type if they like them. I never liked Michael Jordan. So I can objectively tell you his personality type and that he's the best basketball player to ever play in the NBA. And it's not because I'm biased because I like the guy, because I don't.
Yeah. Well, back to Enneagram. Sorry about this. It's just a little illustrative point there, Shannon.
That's important. Okay, so back to question 6. I like to laugh as much as anyone. I should do it more often. Like, I would take the whole sentence like as a whole. How true is that?
I guess 4.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Do you think you should laugh more often?
Yes.
As in you don't do it enough?
I mean, yeah, I laugh quite a bit, but I'd like to do it even more.
Okay. Number 7, Mike.
I'll just follow up a bit on that, just without going into details. But Jeff and I both have a big interest in humor, and we try to bring humor into our events. Like when I did the introduction for the Dario Nardi event, and I like put stuff in there, and so we're always trying to work humor into it. So we both have a big interest in humor. Right then, back to you, Shannon.
Okay. Number 7, my principles and ideals inspire me toward greater achievement and make my life feel meaningful and worthwhile.
2.
So seldom true. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 8, I do not understand why so many people have such lax standards.
I guess also 2.
So do you think that other people are lax? Mostly?
I don't. I mean, I guess not. I don't really understand what that even means.
Do you think that do you think there's standards that people should be upholding and they're not? Mostly.
I mean, probably in some things, sure.
All right, moving on. Number 9, so much depends on me getting things done that I have to be more organized and methodical than others. Sorry, my cats are making all kind of noise.
1.
1, okay. Number 10, I have a personal sense of mission, maybe even a calling to something higher, and I believe that there is something extraordinary that I may accomplish during my life.
I guess 2.
"11, I hate mistakes, and so I tend to be extremely thorough to make sure that things are being done properly."
And again, it's one of those things where it depends on if it's about myself or other people. Because I'm much harder on myself than I am against other people.
Sorry, I have to remedy this cat situation.
Right. Okay.
Gotta do.
And so, Jeff, so what are the things that you're hard on yourself about? We sort of did this before. You know when we did, because other people might not have seen it, the Glencoe thing, where we did a whole thing on weaknesses.
Well, right. I'd say one of the examples is right now when I'm, not on camera, because earlier I did a video where I did a review of a particular flavor of M&Ms, and I did that on camera, and the whole time I was like not happy with my appearance. So you invited me to this thing, and I'm like, I'll do it, but I'm not going to be on camera because I don't want to constantly be looking at myself. And
you know what? I forgot about that because I'm so used to Jeff not being on camera for the past 3 years, even though he's been on camera for the past 6 months. It didn't even crop up in my mind. Hey, Jeff's not on camera.
Yeah, well, there's two main reasons why, if I'm not on camera, why that's the case. One is that I'm not happy with my appearance. The other is just like being able to shift into positions where the camera's not really going to get a good view anyway, and it's just more comfortable. So I got kind of spoiled by that, being able to be in whatever position while we were doing like reviews and stuff like that. So
I'll just say that I think Shannon was a bit like that. Like for ages, it took her. She would like get her into the hangout, and she would not say anything. And then suddenly she talked, and she was like off camera. So she gradually worked her way in.
I almost never have a problem talking if it's something I know anything about. But yeah, I'm definitely very self-critical when it comes to my appearance and ability to do certain things. I mean, just, I'll just, at work, I'll be like, well, I wish I was just slightly less of an idiot. I could get so much more done and get things done the first time, right, and not have to keep, like, going back and trying to figure it out after the fact, after I already screwed it up.
I gotta say, I have a hard time sitting still long enough to be on camera for a hangout.
Yeah. Well, I mean, earlier when Ben was talking about me being on a roll or whatever, like most of that time I was like standing up and walking around the room. So another thing that would have been harder to do if I was on camera, because then I'd be worried about what we're seeing in the background, that kind of stuff. Instead, I was just going through with what I was talking about, not worrying about it.
I mean, if I could walk around with a camera, but it would be like the Blair Witch Project cinematography.
Yeah. Oh, you want to use cashews?
You asking Ben?
No. I mean, I could ask him, but I don't really have a good way to deliver them to Ben at the moment.
All right. So number 11, did we go through this already? I don't know. Did I ask this? I hate mistakes, and so I tend to be extremely thorough to make sure that things are being done properly.
Yeah, I think I said 3. I can't remember.
Okay.
Now.
I think that's when my cats started to
because
destroy
it's like
things.
it's split, because if it's about myself, it'd be much stronger if it was just. But if it's just in general, then it goes down a little bit, because I'm not nearly as hard on other people as I am myself.
Okay. 12, much of my life, I've believed that right is right and wrong is wrong, and that's all there is to it.
Is that a trick question?
Yeah, I think they all are.
I'm like, I 4? I don't know. I hesitate to say 5, because I'm like, it's trying to say something about me that I don't understand.
Right is right and wrong is wrong.
I mean, I guess
and
it's
that's
trying
all
to
there
say
is
like
to
there's
it.
more nuance to it for some people. But see, to me, it's like if something rises to the level of importance that I designated as right or wrong, then I'm going to feel strongly about that. It's like one way or the other. Either I don't feel strongly and I'm completely malleable about whatever it is, pragmatic or whatever, or it's just a defining principle that has a right and wrong, and of course it's right or of course it's wrong. It's like there's not going to be much in between.
Can you give an example of something where you wouldn't budge? Like, this is the right way to do it and you would not compromise?
If I killed him, he probably wouldn't like that. You think that was bad?
Yeah, that's a good one. Murder. I'm pretty much anti-murder, regardless of
of the circumstances. For myself, I wouldn't kill anybody, even if I was threatened. Whereas some people are like, oh, well, I'd kill somebody for self-defense or whatever. But to protect somebody else, I might. So,
Okay. Number 13, I have a hard time leaving well enough alone.
Can you translate that into non-cliche?
Live and let live.
I mean, I guess 1. Because I'm interpreting it as being like it's about being a busybody who's like up in people's business, and I'm not that at all. So I'm gonna say 1.
Okay. 14, many responsibilities have fallen on my shoulders. If I hadn't risen to the occasion, God only knows what would have happened. I don't know how God plays a role in this question, but
is not getting an endorsement from Morgan. He said, "What is this garbage?" Well, but okay, on that one, I have to say that the first thing it makes me think of was, raising my son there. Like that was the only thing I can think of that a lot of responsibility was put on me, and that I had to rise to the occasion. But it's like one thing, I mean, it's an important thing, the most important thing that I think I've had to do. But then so much of the rest of my life, I've totally not risen to the occasion. So it's like, again, it's like I'm seeing, it's not a like normal way of being. It's like one extreme or the other. These are really bringing out like the examples of how contextual and situational everything is in my life. Because I'm like, I guess I have to say 3, somewhere in the middle. It just ends up being that by default because it's like extreme on one thing and totally the other way on something else.
Shannon, have you got this book? Because these are we use the questions. I shouldn't say that. But we use the questions. Don't tell anybody. We use the questions from this book for the tri-typing people, and it's got like 20 statements for each type.
For a second,
I have an idea. Why don't you do type 2 from there?
Okay.
Because you're right. These questions are tough for an SP.
Yeah.
The font of that, Ben, made me think it was for dummies, and I was like, what you were saying earlier about breaking the humor, Ben was like, have you tried the for dummies version? Like, he's gonna understand that one better.
No, it's just that those questions suck. I think that they're not very good Enneagram questions. I'm gonna try and find the right.
Are you talking about when you say the tri-type? Is this the ones that Jonathan was asking?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her name.
Oh, yeah, Jonathan Campbell. Yeah, maybe we want to hold off on this.
I remember thinking those questions were kind of stupid too, but I still wanted to answer them.
Yeah, well,
so that's the difference. Is like I heard him and I was like, well, that sounds kind of dumb. But here's what I would say if somebody asked me that.
Yeah, but what it is, it's like it's a dumb question, but it's like the way we follow up on it, and the way you think it's dumb, that tells you stuff about what you value.
As long as somebody can interpret it that way, then that works.
Yeah, and Jonathan has become a lot better at following up. It's like at the end. Okay, how is this question dumb? Well, thank you. That's even better than giving a straight answer.
So now we know not to throw Shannon into the fire.
Yeah, but he reacted. But you find information out just by the way he reacts to the questions. Like there might have been some ways he responded to the questions which were like, oh, that's a little bit six-ish, or that's a little bit this, or that's a little bit artisan.
Are you, Jeff? Are you open to going right to the type 7? Because I think it also has to do with the type that I was reading. Like if I went through the 7 and the 6, or what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think that would be good. It's just that when you're reading statements from like types like that were like cliched points of view of like the 1, And like, I and I could see there that in those statements, I have to be perfect and things like that. And I can see SP as like wanting to be perfect. Like when you used to dance, there might have been part of you that was going towards perfection, or you might not have had that thought process at all. It might have been some other criterion that you were using, or you might have been focused on how you felt during the experience.
Yeah, all of that, because I have 4 and 1 in my chart type.
I forgot. Right, so yeah, when I'm gonna there they are. Yes. What question? That was weird. Jeff moved from the middle to the side of the screen, and I had a little. It sort of put me off. So if people want to,
How many
okay,
questions are left? Because I'm gonna need to go shopping pretty soon.
There's way too many.
Okay, well, I guess hit me up with a few of them then, and then when I gotta go, I gotta go.
Right.
All right, I'm just going to skip to the 7, just out of curiosity for these questions.
Okay.
I love traveling and discovering different kinds of foods, people, and experiences, the whole fabulous whirlwind of life.
6. Oh yeah, 7. Yeah, 7.
Okay, I figured. My calendar is usually full, and I like to keep it that way. No grass is going to grow under my feet.
Well, I don't actually tend to use a calendar.
Okay, let's say your schedule that doesn't exist.
But if you mean,
Is it
do I
packed
always
with
have something
things?
to do? Then yes.
Yeah.
5. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just say that might be one of those things, Shannon, where you might have a 7, where they might want to be in that, but they might not be in particular circumstances in order to do that.
Where they can, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't understand like when somebody talks about like the only times that I get bored are when I'm literally in a situation where I don't have options and what to do. Like I'm stuck in like, let's say a doctor's office and I don't have like something with me or like internet access or anything. Like I'm stuck in some room where I've just got like some 6-month-old magazines or something and there's nothing else I can do to wait. Like that kind of situation is the only situation where I don't have anything to do. Otherwise, I always have something to do. Way more than I have time to do. When the Guardians are like, "Oh, I couldn't not have a job because I'd go crazy after like 2 days or whatever," and I'd be like, I would like go hardcore on doing whatever it is until I got sick of it, and then I would just do something else. Like, I don't have to have a job. Yeah. Like just not having a job doesn't mean you don't have activities to do. So if I had the money to not require having a job, if I could just have this endless supply of income to do whatever I wanted, then no, I would not have a job. I would just do whatever I wanted to do.
So if you didn't have a job and you had plenty of internet access, you wouldn't be bored.
Yeah, even without internet, but especially if I did. Yeah, I can't imagine how anybody who has access to what's on the internet to ever get like to run out of things to do, because even if you got tired of just like reading web pages or watching movies or whatever, like if you could interact with people in all the various ways like what we're doing now, I mean you had that at your disposal too. I mean like I don't see how you could run out of things to do or talk about or experience.
And there's an example, Shannon, of say the technology widening options for somebody, and it is actually a little bit of a problem for 7s in that there's more options for enjoyment and more,
Yeah,
and it's like more of a temptation.
There are times where I'm kind of like paralyzed in not doing something because I have too many options. So I just sit there kind of like, I don't know what to do next. It's not because I don't have something to do. It's because I have too many things that I could do.
So I wonder, so with all of this stuff out, so for example, if someone was living like 300 years ago, the options for, say, Jeff to enjoy himself would have been fewer. And even like a few decades ago, like you have to wait for that program to be on the television, and then people could just like watch it on cassette, and now it's all on demand, and there's just all of this
those
choice.
aspects were, but the thing is, I would have adapted to whatever situation. I mean, that reminds me when I'm watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures cartoon show from 1991, because they every episode practically they go back in time at some point, and they're like interacting. You know, kind of the running joke of it is they're interacting with the whatever people of that time, but they it's like basically the theme is people are the same regardless of what time they're in terms of the way that they act
and speak English.
Yeah, well, even that's like they make fun of it because it's like they're just enough of speaking like they were supposed they would speak, but they also like it takes them no time at all to like Bill and Ted to get everybody to, saying dude and other stuff like that in the middle of their dialogue, you know. But anyway, it reminds me when I see something like that I'm just like Bill and Ted in terms of you could drop me into whatever time frame, and I was like I could adapt to the surroundings and bring enough of like a certain amount of myself into it, but also absorb a certain amount of the environment that I'm in also. And
I remember
it definitely applies to activities, and then I would find something to do. I mean, I've had times in my life where I was, you know, when I was a kid, we went camping quite a few times. You know, I've been out in places with no access to electricity, running water, all that kind of stuff, and still like found ways to enjoy myself. I wasn't like always being like, oh, I don't have these luxury items, so my life sucks. Or, you know.
I remember them from them just the way they would say, I'm Bill S. Preston and I'm Ted Theodore Logan.
Mm-hmm. And together we are Wild Stallions. Oh. Yeah, I can't quite do the electric guitar sound real well, but you know.
Sorry, Shannon, for that digression.
What'd you say?
Especially given that Jeff said that he had the time was short, so that's terrible of me. All right.
I think that just went a little more into his type. What's important to me is excitement and variety rather than comfort and playing it safe. Although I'll take my comforts wherever I can find them.
5.
17,000?
Yeah, Morgan said 17,000.
My mind is always chattering. Sometimes it seems like I'm thinking about 10 things at once.
No, not really. That's yeah. Morgan said that's him. I'll say 2, because like I really don't tend to think of a bunch of things at once.
He doesn't really tend to think.
Yeah, I don't tend to think, but if I am thinking, it tends to be about one thing. But I will say, like, there are certain circumstances, like if I'm really stressed out, and then I'm more likely to like realize that I'm like flittering from thing to thing in my head more. So I'm kind of doing like I guess like the NP thing.
Goldfish brain.
More than I usually do, but that's me under stress. That's not my norm. So that's why I said 2 instead of 1, because it does sometimes happen, but not that often.
Okay. I wonder if you think about one thing at a time and go quickly to another thing.
And that also sometimes happens, but I would say still not that often. I tend to stay on one thing for a period of time unless something pulls me out of it. So it's like, and even if that happens, like if it's something important enough to me, then as soon as I can get back to that, then I'm getting back to that. So it's like,
Okay.
oh, this distraction happened, but now I'm back to thinking about what I was thinking about before because it's more interesting than whatever I had to do.
Like this little thing.
One thing I absolutely cannot stand is being bored, and I make sure that I am never boring myself.
And when you say never boring myself, does that mean boring to other people or literally boring myself?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I can't. like, I guess it's probably about a 4 either way, because I definitely try not to be boring to other people, but I can't say that I always make sure that I'm not, because it's like people are different and bored by different things. So, but I don't want to be boring to anybody, including myself.
I'm pretty committed when I'm in a relationship, but when it's over, I move on.
I mean, I don't even know how to define that. Moving on, I would guess I would say, I don't know, 2 or 3 or something, because it actually takes me a while to get over things like that. If I'm committed enough for it to be, a big part of my life, then it's pretty painful when it's over. So I guess I'd say 2.
Do you dwell on thinking about it, or
Yeah, for a while, and then when I am done, then I am done. But it takes a while. Like I said,
and
it
then
depends on
before
how
you move
strong something
forward?
was in my life. But if it was strong enough that it was something consuming my feelings and thoughts in my life, then yeah, it's going to take me a while to get over it.
And do you do the getting over it part before you seek a new relationship?
See, that's the thing, is I don't really seek relationships. At least I haven't often. I just sort of live life, and if something happens, then it happens.
Do you sometimes skip that grieving time if something comes along?
It's not an allotted grieving time. I think this is
Yeah.
already.
I just am always open to whatever comes my way, but I can be clouded enough by things. I can be consumed with hurt or anger to not notice that something came my way.
They're misunderstanding it's a scale of your feelings. No matter your feelings one way or the other, not like a time frame issue. It's not like you have a certain amount of grieving time. It's I feel bad until I don't.
Right, exactly.
And if something comes along and makes you feel better, then you feel better. So that would shorten the grieving time.
Mm-hmm.
Quotes.
Yeah. That.
I think with the 7, I think 7s can be motivated to move on quickly. So it is kind of a time thing.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about desire, then yeah, I'd like to move on as fast as possible. It's just that I don't always do that. So,
Okay.
but if it's about preference, then yeah, I'd love to be able to just be like, okay, I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's more about motivation than what actually situationally allows you to behave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm curious and adventurous, and I'm usually the first one of my friends to try whatever is new and interesting.
Yeah.
4, I guess. I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity lately for new and interesting stuff, but
Jeff, there's that
true.
story
But
where
I do think about times where like would go out to eat like with the office and stuff, and go to the same restaurants, and they would always order the same stuff. And well, me and the other SP from the office would like try to outdo each other on our order, because like if he we never wanted to get the same drink for one thing. Like, so one of us would try to actually order a drink before the other one, because then if that was the one that we were intending to get, then we'd have to change.
What about ordering food? Do you tend to order different things, or do you tend to get like a favorite?
Yeah, I unless it's a place where I only like one thing, then yes, I try to get new stuff, and then I'll like this. I'm pretty sure I read on something about 7s, in fact, that I'll order something and immediately I'm thinking I should have got something else, because I'm always thinking like, of the other options for that kind of thing. It doesn't mean I don't enjoy it when I get it. It's just that I do think about the other stuff. Like, any place that has the opportunity to have sort of like a
Is Jeff
sampler
talking? I
of a
can't
bunch
hear
of
you.
different things, I always will try to go with that if I can, because that way I get a little bit of everything instead of having to pick one thing.
So we're having a little bit of a problem. Ben can't hear you.
But what I'll do is I'll just come back. Carry on.
Okay.
All right. We can hear you, Ben. Good luck. When I no longer enjoy doing something, I stop doing it. This is a preference. If you prefer, if you could. Okay.
Yeah, my preference would be not to continue doing anything I don't enjoy doing yet. But as we were talking about earlier, like at the beginning of this hangout, I was talking about the differences between SP and SJ, specifically ISFPs and ISFJs. And that's actually an area where ISFJs would continue doing something they don't enjoy doing because they just believe they're supposed to.
But they'll also whinge about it. Is that right, Joe?
Winged?
Whinge. Complain.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Complaining is a big part of an SJ's life.
I'm not just a fun person. There's a serious, even dark side to me, although I do not like to go there very much.
Yeah, I'd say that's about a 4. Yes, it's an angsty teen novel.
I'm good at the big picture, not so much the little details. It's more enjoyable for me to brainstorm a lot of new ideas than to get involved with implementing them.
No, 1.
So you like the little details?
Yeah, I'm much better with the little details than I am with so-called big pictures.
Now, Ben, I'm going to ask you, do you think that like different typology, this is kind of where
That's
I
the
think
MP7.
some types, yeah.
Yeah. Because you've got with the like certain description, like Naranjo's description of the 7, it's like I very much relate to that, and it's very NP. And I imagine that a lot of like people like Jeff and ESFP and ESCP, if they looked at the Naranjo 7, it's like they would feel alienated by it. Like, what's all this like NE stuff doing in there?
Yeah, I saw a video once that was like a group of 7s, and they were like talking about all this stuff that they had in common. Like if I had used that to do the Enneagram type, I would have said there's no way on that, because everything they were saying I didn't relate to any of it. But I think they were probably all NPs. That's just how it sounded. I mean, I couldn't relate to the stuff they were saying because it was all that kind of stuff. It was like, oh yeah, I'm always I'm always making plans to do something next year or something like that. And I'm like, huh? I'm always thinking of like this concept of whatever it is. And so I never actually do the thing because I'm always thinking too much about how does it apply to concepts, or I'm just like, nope, not me.
Yeah, and then when it mentions monkey mind, well, what do they mean by monkey mind? But I might be accused of that. Shannon, am I monkey mind?
Oh, yeah.
I still don't know what monkey mind is.
Isn't that like that thing where there's like sort of lines of cinnamon inside or something?
You're thinking monkey roll.
Monkey bread, maybe. That's, yeah.
Yeah. I think of it like monkey mind, like mental fleas, like, oh, there's a thought, there's another one, there's another one. Just jump, jump, jump.
Jump,
Different
baby,
thoughts.
jump. Hey, jump.
When I really want something, I usually find a way to get it.
Yeah, again, if
think?
it's a preference, then yeah, that's another tough thing, because I usually find a way. I'm like, well, no, I feel like I don't enough. There's one of those things where I'm hard on myself. I'm like, I don't enough. But do I prefer to? Yeah. I mean, all the time. I don't know how. That one's the one where I don't understand how anybody could not prefer to do that. Like, is there somebody out there going, I'd like to not take advantage
opportunities and not get the things I want.
Yeah. People totally do that, man.
I'd prefer to have a lousy life.
You know, like SJs who are like, I don't deserve to do these things or whatever.
Yeah, okay. I can kind of see that. The people that are like self-punishing or whatever. Yeah, it's just so foreign to me. It's like the world punishes me enough. Why would I do it to myself? Like
Yeah,
objects.
I don't like that
hate me.
question.
You're bullied
Objects hate.
Objects and me have a love-hate relationship. I love it when they do things for me, and then when they don't work right, then I hate them with a passion.
You beat them.
Yes, I take it out on them hard, but I'm not that way with people. Like I love people and I forgive them for all kinds of things. But objects, I don't. I'm really, yeah. Morgan's petting his computer monitor. Like, his computer monitor has not done anything specifically to me, therefore I'm indifferent to it.
You're sadistic with your tools.
Sadistic.
I'm not sadistic, I'm just really reactive, like when they don't work right, when something doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Then I get very angry with them.
So this is a slight digression, Jeff. Do you think ESFP is more reactive and ESFP more reactive and ESTP more proactive? Or is it not as simple as that, or maybe various things?
I think that's just a random
Yeah, kind of.
I don't think
Right, okay.
I mean, yeah, sort of in general, but I think ESFPs are like Keirsey said, there's like that feedback thing, whatever you want to call it, the coworker element, or where you have to get the audience response. So you do kind of have to initiate something sometimes to get that response in the first place, I guess. But
I don't want to go out of my way. But it was people that, I don't know. I think I'm very reactive. I think most of what I do is reactive.
silence.
The entire concept of proactive be like basically acting upon something that would happen in the future or something like that in order to do it like beforehand. If you ever see a situation and then you act upon it, that's already reactive.
Well, I think
people will call that proactive.
I was interpreting it as meaning just like you're living your life, you're just saying like, okay, I'm going to do this thing now. You're not like doing it where you're like, okay, I'm going to go along and then let people do something at me and then respond. You're more like, I'm going to go out there and do the thing I want. And then how people respond, I'll adapt or whatever. I didn't say I never do it. I'm just
like that. I mean, but like, how do you just live your life without doing anything? Don't you do something by living your life?
uh-huh.
Okay, so then while you're doing that thing, people talk to you or interact with you in some way and then you react to it?
Uh-huh.
That's the same thing you said for the second one, even though you're just trying to differentiate. Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, the proactive reactive thing is not a thing because those aren't opposites and both of us do both of those things.
I like pie.
Yeah,
You're terribly, terribly wrong, Ben.
No, I'll put it how Keirsey put it. It's more like
Keirsey's terribly, terribly wrong.
Proactive in terms of like taking charge of the situation, and ESFP reactive in terms of defending their freedom. That they're not naturally about directing other people, taking charge of other people. They will react if someone's trying to cramp their freedom.
That's a weird one because I feel like my want to take charge and tell people what to do is drastically overestimated. There's certain situations in which I do that because that's the effective thing to do, but I don't like that for the sake of it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I don't do that nowadays.
Yeah.
But every now and then, like when I played paintball with my friend, and started telling what to do, like a squad leader. But and we trash everybody every time because I'm the best squad leader. But in most situations, I don't really like doing that much. I don't like
Right.
going out of my way to do that if that's not what the situation already is. I don't like forcing that kind
Right.
of situation. Unlike ESTJs.
Yeah.
So I am reactionary, and one of my reactions that I may have is taking charge of the situation.
Seems like that's kind of a tough scale, tough thing to judge, like whether one is being reactive or proactive.
Right, again, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I don't think those can be on one end and the other of a scale.
Yeah.
Because you can do both of them at the same time, which is inherently means that it's not how that works. Because your reaction can be to be proactive.
Yeah.
You react proactively. Moving on to something.
Well, I agree. It's like thinking and feeling are not necessarily opposites, because the way you think about something can affect your feelings
interchangeably.
Yeah, it's once again, at this random moment, I'll restate my theory that everyone's a feeler because everyone does what they feel is right, even if it's their so-called logic.
Yeah, but you can say it the other way around. You can do whatever they think is right, even if it's their so-called feelings.
Yeah, but people try to act like there's some sort of authority for logic,
whereas most these certain kinds of people who are like, this is the subjective law of the universe.
I'm not bashing anyone.
Oh, whatever.
I'm saying that it's not. I'm saying the opposite. It's like we're not as divided as people try to make it.
Anyway, let's just. Somebody ask him another question. Jeez, what are you guys doing?
Go on, Shannon.
They're paralyzed.
Oh, your mic's
They're
off,
intimidated
Shannon.
by you. They're in awe.
All right.
Oh,
Always happens.
things get me down once in a while, but I quickly pop back up again.
Huh?
What?
I did not understand that at
Things
all.
knock you down, you get back up again quickly.
Things knock me down. Okay. I didn't understand. Yeah, I didn't literally understand the words you said.
Yeah.
I thought you were like, things can be done.
Yeah,
that sounded like you said.
Things get me down once in a while.
Down, but I get back up again. Is that what you said?
Yeah, like that song.
Yeah, Chumbawamba.
You get knocked down.
Tub Thumping, 1998. That's the answer to that one.
Yeah.
I don't drink all those alcoholic drinks that they say in the song, though. So I guess it has to be a 4. Because, if I drank a whiskey drink and a vodka drink or whatever, that would be 5, right?
That might be a 7-ish thing to do, though. They say it's gluttony.
Oh, I definitely have plenty of that. It just doesn't happen to me for alcohol.
Okay. One of my main problems is that I am easily distracted and can get too scattered.
I wouldn't say it's one of my main problems. I mean, it is true, but I'm going to have to say 3 because I can't really fully agree with it being one of my main problems.
Yeah, the main problem with that question is they call it a problem.
Well, it can be a problem.
If you're specifically looking for people who do that naturally, a lot of them might not think that is a problem.
Yeah, that's always the tough thing. The
Poor writing.
It is. That's why I have yet to encounter anything solid that's Enneagram based. It all is too flaky to me.
Tell us how you really feel.
Well, but the thing is, I don't completely dismiss it though. So obviously, there's some part of me that sees some merit in it. It sort of seems like one of those things where it's like the mad scientist in the laboratory that's got like everything is strewn about the lab with stuff everywhere, but they got to some formula that actually accomplished something. So it's like there's something in there that's worth it. It's just they went through a bunch of crap to get there, and more of it doesn't make sense than does.
Well said. Well said.
I tend to spend more money than I probably should.
See, again, then I probably should.
Yeah, like how do I quantify the should part? But I guess I'll say 4.
So poorly written.
Because even evaluating my own things, there's enough stuff where I'd be like, man, if I could go back and take back that purchase, I would. So yeah, because it's one thing, things that I spent money on that I really enjoyed. Like I never regret those things. I'm like, hey, even if it was too expensive, I enjoyed it, whatever. The things where I'm like, man, that was stupid for me to let that like recurring charge happen when I didn't even use whatever the stupid thing was. Like at Long John Silver's, I actually had a thing taken out of my check for dental insurance that I never used. That was optional. I could have had that not on there and not had that taken out every check, but I'm an idiot. So yeah, stuff like that. There's enough of those that I have to say 4 on that one.
Do you tend to be more of a budget person or more like, how do I say this? Do you end up like at the end of the month when rent's due thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done that, like shouldn't have spent on X, Y, and Z, but man, I had a good time.
I mean, the kind of thing that I was just talking about where like I didn't, I don't know.
He doesn't make himself a budget now.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a budget person from the standpoint of like I have any kind of ledger or anything that I put my expenses on or anything like that. No, but there are times where I feel like, man, I shouldn't have spent money. But yeah, but I don't dwell on it very long most of the time.
Other people are great to have along as long as they want to go where I'm going.
Yes. 5.
The answer is yes.
Okay. How are you doing on time, Jeff? Because that's the end of the section.
Beautiful.
Well, I keep checking back my for the person I left a message for on Instagram, and he hasn't responded to me, which is disappointing because I was hoping that I would know before I went shopping what all I need to get. But I don't. But yeah, I guess. Yeah. Huh? What?
Huh?
What?
Huh?
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 Now, what'd you say there, son of boy?
See, there needs to be a question about like how often does somebody say something and then you ask them what they said and then they irritatingly won't tell you, because that'd be 5.
You do the same thing to your mother. You know. Say a joke, doesn't hear it, and then it's like, well, the moment's kind of over. So.
I don't know is the answer to your question. I don't know how I'm doing on time because I have no actual specific time that I have to go. So that's the thing is I don't actually want to.
Continue. Ask him questions.
Yeah, we will enable you, Jeff.
But
Putting off that thing you don't want to do.
Shopping. I should go to the office, but do I want to do either one? No. So fill that in on your questionnaire wherever that question is. You can already answer that one.
Yeah.
If it says, are you in a hurry to do the things you don't want to do, but you need to do? The answer is no. I would always rather sit around talking about myself than do things I don't enjoy doing.
Well, that could also be a 4-ish thing.
Well,
you want to feel a certain way, so you procrastinate.
Why I think I have in that tried type thing, I think I have the 4 in there because I relate to a lot of things on the 4.
I think, Jeff, you once said you relate to 749.
Yeah, especially the ones that call the 4 the individualist, because I'm definitely an individualist.
I'm a kitty cat.
So
She is a kitty cat too.
Ben, do you think we should just throw this in the bonfire and use your questions?
Yeah, have you got like
On video.
Well, I mean, they do sound a bit like I can't believe that that was written after this one.
1999.
Yeah, and this is I don't know. I think it was updated, but this one's actually this was updated to 2000. Right, okay, I'll try and get there with the questionnaire. I'll read some out. They put the contents page back really quite far into the book. Questionnaire 169. Right, so you want the type 4? Right, here we go. So I'll read some statements out, Jeff, and see how you relate to them. Now,
Okay.
some of them might sound a bit weird, but so please go with it.
I'm sure they will.
One of my strengths is that I am a sensitive human being, and I make the most of my experiences, even if it hurts.
Sure. Totally.
Okay, number 2.
See, if it's easier if it's just yes or no, yeah, than that scale thing.
Well, no, because really it's not about yes or no. It really is just a tool, and like I said, the secret sauce is in the details of the answers rather than yes or no. It's not about totaling up
So what do you
the
do
answers. Well, no, people use it in order to get the information from the deeper answers to get a sort of an impression of the type. It's not really quantitative; it's qualitative. And I know that doesn't sound scientific, but
So you're saying that you want him to elaborate more?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny that you would ask me things that lead me to elaborate less.
Well, I mean, even an answer which is like, oh, I don't think that's very good, and why it's wrong, even in that, he gives information. Anyway, so number 2, at my best, I'm able to create something that seems to come out of nowhere, to be an inspiration of some kind.
I don't know. Do I do that?
Oh, come on, Jeff. You love improvising in the moment and being creative in the moment.
Well, yeah. I love that. That's not what you said, though.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's just a starting point. These statements.
It's like,
because
I really enjoy jumping off a cliff. I'm like, no, come on. You totally enjoy improvising. Wait, what?
Well, I never asked that. I mean, you're straw manning me. Right. Okay.
You totally enjoy jumping over straw men.
Right,
Losing energy at all this theoretical stuff.
What you eating there, boy?
I'll move on. Right. Here we go. Number 3. For better or worse, I have tended to follow my intuitions.
Define intuitions.
Okay. Instincts, urges, impulses.
Yeah. Except for when I was prevented from doing so.
Right. Good caveat. I am deeply convinced that I must be true to myself. I'm deeply convinced that I must be true to myself, and as much as humanly possible, I always try to act authentically. Yeah, it's a very NF-ish question, that one. Statements.
Yeah, I had long arguments with the NFs on the Keirsey forum about this topic because I was saying we were sort of talking about authenticity and how it's defined differently based on the person's temperament. It's like, because they made it into, it's like that's an idealist thing, but it's like every temperament cares about that. They just view it differently. Like everyone wants to authentically be what they want to be. It's just how they define that is different. So I think a lot of SPs would tell you that they want to be authentic, because it's like I don't want to be some like phony person or something, that some kind of, thing that somebody else wants to put on me. I want to be myself. So you could say that's like an authentic thing. But the argument came up because people were saying, well, SPs will like mislead people to get things they want, and that's not authentic. And I'm like, well, it is authentic if that's part of how you are.
Authentically being the lying bastard you are.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Mm.
because I talked about that thing that Keirsey said about like the chameleon aspect, where we tend to like fit into different environments because it's like instinctually that's what we do. It's like you're in an environment so where your choices are, stand out in a way that's like, I have no idea what I'm doing here, so I'm very noticeable in that sense, or uh, adapt to the environment so that you can figure out what to do from there. So it's like, if that thing is, I can think of movie characters like Fletch. He's like, every situation he gets into in the whole movie, it's like he has to make up some new identity of who he is or why he's there, because otherwise he doesn't get his story. Is he inauthentic for doing that? No, I'd say he's authentically a guy who just changes his identity when he needs to.
Right. So he's authentic to himself, not necessarily about always presenting the same image to somebody.
You making a
Yeah,
stegosaurus over there?
possibly.
Yeah, authentic to himself. That's probably good. And to his audience, I guess, because he was like a reporter. So he would write a newspaper story. So his audience expects a certain whatever from him, from his story. And the way he gets that story, he's got to get into a lot of situations where he has to mislead people in order to get the story.
So number 5, the power of my creativity comes from expressing my deepest feelings in some form, whether personally or artistically.
I would say that
Cherry soda.
that I've been told by other people, and I agree with them, that I have an ability to sort of tap into universal human emotions. And so I can I can tell stories, come up with dialogue and things like that people can relate to because they kind of appeal to those universal feelings people have, the kind of pain and joy and stuff that people go through regardless of circumstance. And so you can adapt those things to different settings and have your characters be authentic, realistic, or whatever because they have those universal things. So whereas there are some people that in their storytelling focus on really specific differences, so that it's like if you told this story about like ancient China or something like that, you have to view this as this historical thing. Otherwise, you get nothing out of it because you can't relate to that environment. You're not from ancient China, so you don't know what it's like. Whereas if I was going to write a story set in ancient China, my focus would be on the things that people can still relate to. They're the human emotions and things that are always the same regardless of setting.
Right. So
I think it did. Well,
is
because what he said about my creativity coming from. So I'm saying.
yeah.
So what I mean by that is that it's not necessarily my personal deepest feelings that are different from everybody else's, because I feel like humans all have the
Right.
same
Right.
feelings.
So yeah,
They're
this is
expressed in different ways sometimes.
in function terms, this gets put under FI, like it's about the personal connection between people.
Questions to an
Right.
Well, that's
Number
the thing is, I believe in sort of, this is the closest I come to in FE, actually, is probably believing there are universal emotional connections that people have. That's the one way I think we're all connected, in the sense that as human beings, there are certain things that are just true across the board of all of us. And so the more that you appeal to those things, the more you're going to connect with other people. The more specific you are about a particular thing, the less you will, because anybody who doesn't relate to that particular activity or
experience is going to be like, oh yeah, that's not about me. Whereas if you just do something about the pain of loss, well, anybody who's lost anything then knows what that feels like, regardless of what it is.
I mean, this is one of the reasons why Shakespeare has appealed to so many people in like different cultures and across the decades, hundreds of years. Is like because he appeals to these universal human situations and emotions.
Yeah. Now, I personally, that's an example. Say, I can understand and appreciate that, and still personally think Shakespeare stuff is boring.
Hmm.
But that's my opinion, and I understand what you're saying in terms of I know that is true about his stuff. Is that there appeals to people on a level that goes beyond the setting of it. I just don't happen to find it entertaining myself. Usually.
So it's like there are books out there like Shakespeare where it's translated into modern English that you might relate to more, like because you get to the core of the story and the characters. Right. Yeah. I think number 6. I'm aware of what I feel, and I try to be honest with myself about what my feelings are telling me.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a
That's one of those ones
100%.
I've often said I don't understand. Another thing I've argued with people about, because especially with NTs, because I talked about the concept of not being aware of feelings. My personal, this is another reason I hate psychology, uh, because my personal view is if you're not aware of it, it's not a real feeling.
What I'll say to folks is
I want to tell you as a T,
Jeff
I can
hates
look
psychology.
back on situations and realize afterwards that my actions were being altered slightly by what I can now see was a feeling that I had when in the situation, because because my actual mind was focused on the objective or whatever else it was. I didn't notice those changes. I didn't notice that I was changing what I was doing.
But see, to me, the definition of a feeling is something you feel. Therefore, if you don't feel it, it's not a feeling.
If you get, So, I mean, if you're feeling multiple things at the same time, but you're doing something and therefore focusing on one of them that is required to do that thing, you're simply not thinking about the other ones, even if you're feeling them at the time. I'm saying I could remember that, oh yeah, I was feeling that thing.
I can accept that to a certain level, like on a physical level. Like I can see how you'd be like, okay, somebody chopped my arm off, and I also my nose is also running. I'm focusing more on the fact that my arm is gushing blood than I am than my nose running. So I'm saying that there's physical aspects where, yes, simultaneously you can be less aware of a thing. But to me, it's like that's different. It's one thing to say I have multiple feelings going on, and it's hard to like focus on all of these different feelings. So, but to me, it's like it ends there. Like you can't say I felt this thing if you didn't feel it. It's not. It's only there if you're aware of it.
Well, I mean,
because it's a feeling, not a physical, not a actual like physical ailment occurring to you, or a brain impulse. It's like obviously you can't be aware of every impulse your brain is having at the same time.
I'm talking about a situation, not like the intuitives are telling you where they're like, there's this subconscious thing that's acting upon you that you can't notice. I'm saying there's situations in which I am doing something, including thinking about something, in which I'm also feeling something, but I'm not thinking nor noticing that in the exact moment because I'm thinking about something else. I'm very focused on something else.
All right.
And then I can think back to it later, and then I can be like, oh, I was just doing that because I can notice it when I'm not so focused. I'm not saying that it's not one of those situations where I think back and go, that didn't happen, but I guess I was being affected on the subconscious level, whatever.
I guess the concession that I make, the farthest I'll go on that is to say that I believe there are things that you can sort of be clouding things to the point where, like, kind of fear or anxiety type of things that are fueling you, and you're not really aware that that's what's fueling you. So on that level, I can sort of understand. Yeah, that's as far as I can go on that.
Exactly what I was talking about.
Well, good. I'm glad we were able to come to agreement then. But what I was talking about before, that's not what they were saying. It wasn't. It was. It
I
was.
know.
Yeah. So
That's also what I said.
okay.
You told me to waste time.
No, it's not. I just told you I agreed with you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
I just said I did.
I think Carl Jung would call that sort of directive thinking, when you're actually like making an effort to judge the situation by emotion, and it lines up with the model of like you're in the top two functions. Like I'm in this situation, this extroverted sensing, and I've got introverted thinking as auxiliary, and then people can then go in different situations and change their state of the functions. This is just a metaphor, but it's how it's modeled, but it's consistent with the model.
Yeah, the more and more that I see people talk about like so-called dominant functions, the more convinced I am that such a thing is not provable in any way. You can't really say what someone's dominant function is.
Yeah, I know, and the EEG research is like it's a lot more complicated than that, and even the EEG research is not as complicated as the actual human being at that moment.
Man, hey Darren, are you guy? I love the
Yep.
stuff he does.
Well, good.
We love the stuff with like physically, looking at the differences between types by
Yep.
brain activity. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
the most interesting part of personality craft. Or
the latest
in general. When I took psychology, it was extremely boring, idiotic nonsense because it was all theoretical trash, and I'm supposed to memorize what idiot came up with this completely ridiculous concept that can't apply to actual humans because it's so stupid. And then we got to the part that actually starts talking about brain chemicals, the actual science part of psychology, and that was super interesting. And then we got back to more theoretical garbage from idiots, and I was bored again.
Yeah, we actually showed something in the event on Thursday with Dario, where he showed these different brains activity for the
Even field.
yeah, for the subtypes, for the DCNH subtypes, where those who are creative tend to have this kind of pattern, a starburst pattern. Those are more dominant, like they've got the front activity, and well, you can see it on the screen.
My starburst pattern is tropical.
Okay, right then, I'll move on.
I'm looking at it.
So yeah, so we did that. That's on my channel, Morgan. It's like the video before this one.
Your crude drawings don't really.
I didn't draw it. Dario did it, and he did it quickly.
Okay, his crude drawings don't really lead me to understand where in the brain he'd be looking and seeing this.
Oh, it is like these whole brain states.
I mean, like, are you looking at the front? Are you looking from the top?
I think it's from the top.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, we went through Megan Lavota's report when she got EEG'd. And
I see what's going on here.
And there she is. She's got a very popular YouTube channel, 10,000.
So what's this video about?
This is about, we did it with Dario.
Mm-hmm.
Megan Lavota.
What's it called?
It's called, it starts VG number 22.
Because it's too long and complicated.
Yeah, I think it's
parentheses, dots, number signs.
It's just got, if it just starts Victor Galenko number 22, and then something like Dario Nardi and Dr. G on DCNH.
Just link it to him, and I'll pick
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right then.
Back to your video you're currently in.
Yeah. Right. Where's Shannon? Right, there we go. Where are we on now? Number 7. For better or worse, I have a vivid imagination, and I am able to create a world of fantasies that is very real to me.
No, I wish I could do that.
My older brother was pretty good at that, at least when we were kids. He would like retreat into his fantasy world. For me, it's like I think it was a Simpsons episode where like Homer's got something he's doing in his brain, and then like it gets kicked out of his head by something else that's like real. I can't remember now. It's been too long since I've seen that, but yeah, that's kind of how mine is. Like even my fantasies, like reality intrudes on them. I can't completely fantasize like it because it's like some part of my brain that's like the realistic part will be like, no, that couldn't have happened because of this following factual thing. I'm like, get out of here.
Right. Number 9. I have a poetic sensibility. However, it often leaves me feeling melancholy and emotionally vulnerable.
This is just the enough talk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that the word often, the T is silent. That's what I know.
Oh, no, that's not necessarily in English, but anyway.
Yeah,
I'm wrong. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'll fold.
Here's the ultimate test. Okay, add an S to the beginning of that word. Now, how do you say it?
You're right. They'll say soften. Soften. If you say soften. Yeah.
Right. So then drop the S.
Okay, I'm moving on. Number 10. I question myself about everything. My motives and behavior. What I have said to someone, whether or not I will be up to a certain task, to the point where I can sometimes do little else.
Only when I'm really stressed. That's the thing. It's like that's a real good like test of like my stress level, because if I'm like constantly questioning myself, then that's when I'm like under stress. And so when I'm just being like happy and enjoying myself, then no, I'm not questioning anything.
Right. Number 11.
Here is just how an F are you?
Not exactly.
Right. Number 11. I have tended to become frustrated with new romantic interests, only to later feel disappointed and disenchanted with them. I am sure this confuses people. It confuses me.
No, I've usually been the object of that from other people.
Right, okay. Number
That's
12.
what the NF chicks do to me. Become infatuated with me and then lose interest in me because they want me to be like deeper than I am or something.
Number 12. When someone says something when someone says something I find upsetting, I can't do anything except turn it over in my mind until I have resolved it.
No.
Okay. I often feel uncomfortable around people, even my friends, and I am not always sure why. Maybe I'm just a loner.
I mean, I feel uncomfortable around people in the sense that I'm not great at like starting conversations or like knowing like the right things to say and but I'm not like Kevin from the Wonder Years. I'm like the opposite of him. Like he gets given so many opportunities and he blows them because he's like so wrapped up in like something that isn't even happening. Whereas I'm like more likely to not even get that opportunity because I don't get myself into the situation in the first place. If I did, I would handle it much better.
Yeah.
So that's the frustrating thing for me about when I watch TV shows. It seems like TV shows are filled with characters that have so many opportunities that they don't take advantage of.
Yeah.
They find a way to ruin it instead of a way to enjoy it.
Yeah, and to me that just seems like contrived. It's like
Whereas my life is filled with
feeling like I never got into the situation to have that opportunity in the first place. And I realized that I have had more opportunities than I realized. That I can look back and be like, okay, I probably did in this situation, and somehow I missed it. So I'm not saying that I don't miss opportunities, that I take advantage of everyone, but some of the ones they have are just so obvious, and it's like, I don't know. It's just so many recycled plots, I guess. Like every show does the main character has 2 dates to the dance plot, and like all of those things over and over again, where it's like, this is so easy, and then they always ruin it.
Right. Number 14. When I'm feeling vulnerable, I tend to withdraw into my shell to protect myself from being hurt to protect myself
Yes,
from being hurt anymore.
I definitely did that a good portion of my life. I retreated into myself because I felt like I was hurt when I expressed myself. Kind of goes back to what I was just talking about, because there's opportunities I didn't get because of that, because I didn't put myself out there, because it seemed like every time that I did, I'd get hurt by it, because there was a lot of people that, well, in some cases, like somebody like my parents, they thought they were doing it for my own good or whatever. They thought, oh, we need to protect him. So they were like repressing things that I would express. And then when it came to people my age, then it was like, oh, kids have that thing where it's like to project their own insecurities on other people so that they don't have to deal with the hurt. They throw it at somebody else. So I was easy to pick on because I was sensitive and took things personally. So people knew that they could hurt me that way, and so they did.
Right. I think I'm on this one. It's very painful to me, but I can become so angry at people that I can't bring myself even to be in the same room with them, much less to talk with them about what's bothering me.
Sure.
Right. Number 16. Everyone else seems to be happier than I am. I seem to be emotionally damaged and unable to function very well.
Those are like two very separate things. No, there's definitely plenty of people who don't seem like they're happier than I am. But I've definitely been emotionally damaged by things. Sure. I'm not currently in a period where my emotional damage is causing me to not be able to live my life, but there have been times in my life where I was.
Right. Number 17. I don't seem to be able to pull myself together. I don't know where to begin, or if I do make some progress, it seems it can all be lost in a second.
Oh, sure. That always seems to be the case. Like everything is very just under the surface. Whatever confidence I've developed is always very thin in terms of, it's not that hard to knock me back down off of my confidence level for sure.
Right. Number 18. Thank God nobody talks to me the way I reproach myself. A voice inside me says the most cruel, contemptuous things to me.
Sometimes, yeah.
Right.
Are you getting anything
Number
out of this?
19. Yeah, we are. I
Okay.
think Shannon is. Yeah, she's nodding. I have thought about suicide. It's the only. Wait a minute. I have thought about suicide. It's a way out I might be forced to take someday.
Yeah, I did when I was 12. Not recently. I
Right.
think another time when I was about 20, I probably thought about it again, but that time was actually too depressed to seriously consider it, because I felt like in order for me to commit suicide, I would have to care more than I did. I was like
Ah,
devoid of interest in anything, including death, you know. But thankfully, I haven't felt that way recently.
right.
Because the way I think, and I think it's my theory that it's just pretty universally true for SPs. It's like we are, because we are sensation seeking and sort of activity seeking, experience seeking. If we have something that we're into, that we can sink ourselves into, then we always have something to live for, even no matter what anybody else is doing or how they treated us or what the actual circumstances or setting are. If we have that thing, whatever it is, then that's what we kind of default to. That's where we most go to that, go with your instinct and just do the thing that you can do. And if we ever feel like we don't have that thing, like we don't know, when we ask ourselves, well, what do I want to do now? What am I into? Then we can't answer that question. That's the closest we are to, like, thinking it's time to check out because there's nothing here to do. So there are periods of time, I call them shift periods, where kind of lose interest in a particular activity or whatever it is and haven't really found that next thing yet, where it's sort of like on the borderline of that, but you're not quite there yet. So it's sort of just this kind of in-between state where you're probably more susceptible to those type of feelings, but you're still open to the next opportunity to actually be interested in something.
Right. And the 20th
And I
is?
don't know if Shannon relates to that or not. I'd be curious to know.
To me, I'm thinking about the longing for. Sorry, my mind was kind of doing an overview of the type 4 for
That's
you.
okay. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but if at some point you have thoughts about that, I'd love to hear them. But it doesn't have to be right now if you don't want to.
Yeah, I'll have to go back because I was actually focusing more on how type 4 are you, and I didn't quite catch what you were saying.
Okay.
Welcome to my world, Shannon.
33.6%.
I think it's a bit more than that.
Oh, okay. Sorry, 43.6%. It's definitely something 3.6. I'm seeing that very strongly in my crystal ball.
I think especially when people relate to the less glamorous aspects of an Enneagram type, it's not like doing it for like a self-image reason. I think those are the bits that
Are there glamorous parts of Enneagram types? I have yet to encounter that.
Well, all that stuff early on about, I'm so creative and imaginative. Like, there's been lots of people who might want to see that.
Because I had that when I was younger. Like I said, that's kind of the reason why originally when I first read the stuff, I was like, oh yeah, I'm the INFP, because it was like, this is the type that's so misunderstood and so deep and meaningful and no one gets them and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's me, dude.
Yeah, but you actually...
But then when I was honest about it later, I was like, yeah, it's really not.
Well, the weird thing is in Model G, sometimes when the ESFP in certain situations can go a little bit INFP-ish, just like I can go a little bit ENFP-ish.
Well, it's my theory that any type can go a little bit any other type in certain situations.
Well, yeah. Anyway, number 20.
That's kind of the point. It's like whenever anybody is like, I relate to elements of all the types, I'm like, congratulations on being a well-rounded human being.
Yeah.
Not being a walking stereotype. Good job.
Yeah, I agree with that. Life is full of pain and loss and sadness. At least my life has been.
I mean, yes, but it's not consumed me all the time. Yeah, I think as I've gotten older, my perspective has gotten, I don't know if wider is the right word, but just like the things that cause me pain and sadness still do just as strongly as they ever did, but I'm not like oh, it's the end of the world because of that. I'm just like, yeah, this sucks for the time that it sucks, and then as soon as things are okay, then it's okay, you know. And somebody probably, well, pretty much all time, somebody has it worse than I do. Somebody's going through worse pain, worse sadness, worse circumstances. So, you know, for me to sit around and mope about my life would be kind of stupid.
Yeah. So I think you get like two poles from there with the 4 and the 7. Like the 7 has these defense strategies to make them feel better, and then the 4 sort of sit in their emotions. So
yeah, well, like I said, there have been times in my life I definitely did that, but I feel like now I look at it as, are there things that I would like to have different circumstances in my life? Sure. There are things that are pretty fundamental to my type that I wish were better. And in terms of that stereotype about having all the friends, I'd like to have more friends. I'd like to have people that like every day were like, hey, you want to go do this with me? That would be great if that happened. But the way I look at it is, if the choice is me sitting around and moping about the fact that people aren't calling me to go do fun things or try to enjoy myself the best I can by myself, then I'm going to do that, because I feel like I don't want to waste my life just sitting around, you know, complaining about what I don't have and wishing things. You know, that's such a waste of time to me.
over to you, Shannon.
Well, you want to know my thoughts right now?
Yep.
I'm thinking I'm hearing a little, I'm curious about the instincts here, and as far as they relate to 4. Because Jeff, what you're describing is kind of, I can relate, because I want, like, I have my feelings and I have my disappointments and I long for things, but I don't always want to show it, and I don't always want to dwell on it. Like, I consider myself self-pres 4, and that's kind of a stoic, stiff upper lip. Like, yeah, things can get me down, but I'm not going to let it keep me down. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see if Jonathan will do a typing of instincts with you, Jeff, or if you're even interested. But that's what I'm thinking right now. Because I'm thinking, I can
like
see
we might have done
having
that
some of the
before. I can't remember.
We might have. I think Jeff's a clear sexual instinct, sexual 7 instinct.
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, I agree with that. I think, if I remember right, it was that was first, and then the social one second, and the self-preservation one actually last.
Because a big thing with Jeff, Shannon, is connection, getting the connection.
My favorite soap opera character, Tina, I think, is an example of a self-preservation 7, because she had the like upbringing of, she was from a poor family, and that she found out as an adult that her father was actually a rich guy, so she tried to like make up for lost time by like claiming her right to be in this rich family and get all the fancy stuff she never had growing up. And I read a thing online that was like talking about this type 7 self-preservation, and saying it was like so much of what I was reading that was like that character.
I think that I have to go soon.
Okie doke. I'll let you go. I will
I
not force you
have
to
your
stay.
permission.
Yes. Ben, you got to remember to turn your mic back on when you're speaking.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll end the broadcast, and we'll have a little chat with Shannon afterwards, sort of like organize a few things, get some thoughts on things.
Alrighty.
So we might do this again, folks, in future with Jonathan.
I'm sure they're
Who knows how long of a label Ben's going to give this one, because it was all over the place.
Yeah, I'll just. It won't be that long. All right.
So only 30 words.
inquirers.